It was one of those nights where the world felt emptied out. The radio barely hummed. The roads were slick from an earlier drizzle, and the fog came down thick from the hills, rolling slow like breath. I've been on patrol since dusk, driving the same stretch of cracked asphalt near the old mining road. Most nights out here, nothing happens. Just darkness, old trees, and the quiet hum of the cruiser. But that night, the air felt heavier, like it was holding something back. I remember tapping the steering wheel, half asleep, when dispatch crackled through. A woman's voice, steady, but faint from the static. Unit 47, respond to strange activity near the Merrill Creek Cemetery gate. Caller reports lights. Strange lights. That was all they said. That IT wasn't unusual. Teens sometimes snuck out there, trying to scare each other. But there was something in the dispatcher's tone that made me sit up straighter. I confirmed and turned the wheel, the tires crunching on gravel as the cruiser swung toward the old road. The fog was so thick it swallowed the beams of my headlights. Every few seconds, a branch scraped across the windshield, slow and deliberate. I rolled the window down a crack, letting the cool air in. The forest smelled damp, like moss and rust. The kind of smell that sticks to your clothes. That I drove that road 100 times. But it felt longer that night, like it stretched out ahead of me, bending away from where it should have gone. The radio hissed, whispering nonsense through the static. I turned the dial, thinking it might be interference from the hills, but then I caught a fragment. Just one word, faint but clear, and why name it? I froze for a second. I told myself it was just a trick of the frequency, but the sound of it, it was familiar, too familiar, that I shook it off and kept driving. Eventually, the graveyard gate came into view. The rusted iron was bent in one corner, and the NO entry sign hung sideways, swinging with the breeze. The headlights caught on something glinting on the dirt road just beyond the gate. Tire tracks, fresh ones, they led in, but not out. I parked the cruiser, engine still running, and stepped out. The air was colder here, almost sharp in my lungs. The fog moved like smoke, curling between the gravestones. My boots crunched on the gravel as I walked closer to the gate. The wind had died completely, and for the first time that night, I noticed just how quiet everything was. Not a single insect, not even the sound of the trees creaking. Just my footsteps that I followed the tire tracks past the gate, moving my flashlight slowly side to side. The beam caught the edge of an old headstone. Then another, then rows of them stretching into the dark. Names half erased by time. The earth looked disturbed in places, uneven. The track stopped near a broken statue of an angel. One tire mark looped around, then just vanished, like the car had lifted straight off the ground. That's when I heard a whisper. Soft at first, almost too faint to tell it was real. Hey, I froze. That IT came again, closer this time, a little louder. Hey, you still out here? My heart slammed against my ribs. I turned the flashlight toward the sound. The beam cut through fog, but there was nothing there, no movement, just silence again. But I knew that voice. IT couldn't be. IT was him and MY partner, Mark. He'd been dead 3 years. I remember every second of the night he died. The call, the scream on the radio, the gunfire that followed. They found his body near a back road not too far from here. And now, standing in the graveyard, I could swear he was whispering my name again, just like he used when we'd sneak up on each other during patrol. I turned in a slow circle, shining the light through the mist. Mark? My voice cracked. That you? Nothing. Just fog. Then the radio on my belt clicked point, one sharp burst of static. Then silence that I lifted it to my mouth. Dispatch. This is 47. I'm at Merrill Creek Cemetery. Do you copy? No response. I tried again. Still nothing. Then I heard a faint sound behind me, gravel shifting under a boot. I spun around fast, light shaking in my hand. There was a shadow standing between two graves. Tall, still, just a darker shape against the fog. Sheriff's Department. I called out, "You're trespassing. Show me your hands." The shadow didn't move. I took a step forward, and the fog thinned just enough for me to see the outline of a uniform. My uniform. The same hat, same jacket. That MY stomach twisted. "Who are you?" I asked, and no answer. The figure turned slowly, like it was about to walk deeper into the cemetery. "Stop right there!" I shouted, moving closer. But the second I blinked, it was gone. Just a fog again. Drifting over the graves. I stood there for a long moment, breathing hard. My flashlight beam trembled across the ground until it caught on something small, half buried in the dirt. A radio mic. IT looked old. Rusted, the kind we used years ago. I crouched and picked it up. The casing was cracked and the cord frayed, but on the back, there was a name scratched into it. Mark Haynes' MY partner's name. The same radio he'd been carrying the night he died. I felt every hair on my arm stand up that I dropped it, stepped back, and tried my radio again. Still dead air. The fog began to move faster now, swirling around my legs like it had a will of its own. I started walking toward the gate, quick at first, then faster. But the more I walked, the more the path seemed to stretch. The cruiser lights that should have been visible through the fog were gone. IT was like I was walking in circles. I stopped, forcing myself to breathe. "It's just fog," I whispered. "You're tired. You're hearing things." But then I heard it again. MY name. This time, right next to my ear. So close I felt the air of it. I turned, swinging the light. But there was nothing. Only a row of graves, freshly dug. The nearest one didn't have a marker yet. Just a wooden post with a small metal tag hanging from a nail. The light hit the tag and I saw letters etched into IT to MY badge number. The earth beneath it was uneven, like someone had just finished burying something that MY throat went dry. I stepped back, almost tripping on a root. The fog thickened again, rising up, curling around the graves. I thought I saw movement within it. A figure walking slow between the stones. Then another behind it. Shapes forming, fading, reforming again. Each one looked like an officer in uniform. Some with faces, some without. They were all standing. Watching me. I backed up until my heel hit something solid. The gate. I turned, reached for it, and yanked it open. The hinges screamed. I stumbled through and ran toward where the cruiser should have been parked. IT wasn't there. Just tire tracks in the mud, leading nowhere. The fog had swallowed everything. I pulled out my flashlight again, but the beam flickered weakly, then died. The batteries were new, but it was gone, just dead. I smacked it with my palm, desperate, whispering curses under my breath. Then, faint to the static of my radio, a voice came through. 47, it was Mart again. "You shouldn't have come back." The radio clicked once and went silent. The MY hand was shaking so bad, I almost dropped it. I stood there for a long time, staring into the fog, half expecting him to step out of it. I wanted to believe it was just in my head, that I was tired, or that the signal had picked up some weird interference. But deep down, I knew IT wasn't the first time this place had called me. And as I looked back toward the cemetery gate, I swear I saw someone standing behind again. Same outline, same hat, same badge, mine. I didn't go back. I just got in the car, wherever it was, and drove until the fog broke, until the trees thinned and the first hint of dawn touched the horizon. But I could still hear his voice, even now on the radio in the hum of the cruiser, sometimes to the static of dispatch, always the same words. "You never left." The fog hung low that night, crawling over the headstones like a living thing. I should have gone back to that place, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd missed something the first time. Something important. The report said strange lights, nothing more. But the moment I closed my eyes that morning, I kept seeing the gate again, rusted and bent, creaking in a wind that wasn't there. I heard that whisper, the one that said my name in Mark's voice. It looped in my head like static caught in a wire. That'd be why the next night I gave in. I told dispatch I was checking the perimeter again, though I didn't bother saying where. They'd just tell me to leave it alone. When I arrived, the fog was even thicker than before. The road glistened under the cruiser's lights, slick and dark, like wet oil. I killed the engine, and everything fell silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that makes your own heartbeat sound too loud. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The air was colder here, heavy. My breath came out white, curling away before it even reached the ground. The gate loomed ahead, twisted from years of rust, but now it stood half open. I was sure I'd closed it last time. The metal screeched as I pushed it wider. The sound echoed, fading deep into the fog. I walked in slow, the beam of my flashlight sweeping over the crooked stones. The fog seemed to follow me, rolling in close until I felt like I was walking underwater. That's when I noticed that a patch of ground, darker than the rest, that I moved closer, the light trembling in my hand. The earth looked fresh, the dirt soft and wet, piled unevenly beside a sunken headstone. The stone itself was cracked down the middle, a faint engraving still visible through the grime. Haynes! For a second, I forgot how to breathe. I dropped to one knee, brushed the mud away with my glove. The rest of the name was missing, like someone had tried to chip it out. I could just make out the year, 2020. The year Mark died, that I told myself it was just a coincidence. Probably another family with the same name, but the dirt was too fresh, too disturbed. IT looked like something had been pulled out. The ground still glistened, like it was bleeding rainwater. My flashlight flickered once, twice, then steadied. The beam caught a faint trail leading away from the grave. Not footprints exactly, but shallow impressions, like something had dragged itself across the ground. The trail disappeared between two mausoleums that I stood up, every instinct in me screaming to leave. But my legs moved anyway, slow and stubborn, like they belonged to someone else. As I followed the trail, I began to hear a faint, rhythmic sound. Breathing. At first, I thought it was me. I stopped walking, held my breath. The sound didn't stop. It was low, heavy, wet. The kind of breathing you hear from someone sick, half drowned in their own lungs. It came from behind the broken headstones, deep in the fog. I aimed my flashlight toward it, but the beam barely cut through the air now. It bounced off the mist like it was hitting glass. "Who's there?" I called out. My voice sounded too small. The breathing stopped. For a long moment, there was nothing, no sound, no movement. Then the fog shifted, curling in on itself. I thought I saw a shape crouched low to the ground, pale against the dark soil. But when I blinked, it was gone. That MY heart pounded in my throat. I turned back toward the grave, trying to get my bearings, but something was off. The layout had changed. The rows of graves weren't where they'd been before. The path I came down was gone. Every headstone looked the same now. Cracked, nameless, swallowed by moss. I tried a radio dispatch, but all I got was static. "Unit 47, checking in," I said. "Anyone copy?" No answer. Just that soft hiss, like someone breathing on the other end. The air felt thicker now. Every breath burned in my chest. My flashlight dimmed again, the light pulsing in and out like a heartbeat. I slapped the side of it, but it only flickered harder. That's when I heard it again, a soft crunch of dirt behind me. I turned slowly, the light sweeping across the graves. Nothing. Then another sound, closer. Something shifting in the soil. I backed up a step, shining the light down at the ground. The dirt near the broken grave was moving, rising and falling, like it was breathing. That I froze at 81st. I thought it was an animal trapped underneath, but then I saw the shape of a hand, thin gray, the skin stretched tight like leather, pushing through the surface. The fingers twitched, clawing weakly at the air. That I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a root. The flashlight beam shook wildly, catching glimpses of things as it pushed higher. The wrist, the arm, wet clumps of dirt sliding off as it forced itself upward. And I couldn't move, couldn't even shout. My mind went blank except for one word: run. But I didn't. Something in me needed to see it, needed to know. The breathing grew louder, not from my chest, from the ground. It gurgled and wheezed, bubbling like someone drowning under the soil. The hand clawed at the surface again, pulling something else with it. A sleeve, dark blue fabric, streaked with mud. A uniform at MY uniform.my flashlight slipped from my hand and landed in the dirt, beam rolling across the ground. For a second, the light caught a face beneath the soil, pale, twisted, eyes open and glassy. Mud filled its mouth like it tried to scream before it died. Then the dirt caved in over again. I stepped back, gasping for air, but the sound, that wet, choking breath, followed me. It came from every direction now, circling through the fog. I spun around, trying to see, but the flashlight's beam was fading fast. I dropped to my knees, grabbed it, smacked aside again. Nothing. The dark closed in around me like a curtain. Then I heard my name, Not whispered this time. Spoken, Tom. It was him, Mark. The voice came from somewhere deep in the earth, muffled but clear. Help me. I stumbled forward, half crawling, until I found the broken grave again. The earth was still shifting, rising and sinking like something breathing beneath it. My fingers trembled as I reached out, pressed my hand against the dirt. It was warm, too warm, Mark. I said. My throat felt tight. If that's you, just stay still. I'm calling for help. The ground beneath my palm pulsed once. Then again, like a heartbeat, and then a whisper right against my ear this time. You left me here. I jerked back, falling on my hands. The fog around me started to swirl faster, spinning like a slow cyclone. My flashlight rolled away, its beam cutting across the ground one last time. I saw something glinting beside the grave, a badge that I crawled over, grabbed it. My badge. Same number, same scratches. But the metal was bent, half melted, like it had been through fire. When I looked up again, the grave was gone. The ground flat, untouched, and no sign of digging. No sign of movement. That I stumbled back toward the gate, my breath ragged, the fog thin just enough for me to see the outline of the fence. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Every step I took, I felt eyes on me, like someone was walking just behind, their breath cold against my neck. That by the time I reached the cruiser, dawn was breaking. Pale light stretched across the treetops. The fog began to lift, revealing the cemetery in its true shape again. The broken grave was there, but sealed. I walked up to it one last time, stared at the cracked headstone. The name was gone, completely smoothed out, just fresh. Wet earth beneath. As I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in the cruiser window. For a second, I could have sworn there was someone standing beside me. Same uniform, same badge, covered in mud, and when I blinked he was gone. But I still heard it, that slow, wet breathing. Right behind me, ChatGPT said, I didn't sleep after that night. Even when the sun came up, I sat in the cruiser for hours, just staring at the cemetery gate through the windshield. The fog had lifted, but the air still felt heavy, like the place didn't want to let me go. I should have driven straight home, but something about what happened, the grave, the breathing, the voice, felt unfinished. Like I'd walked out halfway through something that wasn't done with me. That by the time I got back to the station, the morning shift was rolling in. The smell of stale coffee and paper filled the hallways. Everything looked normal, but I didn't feel normal. My uniform was still damp from the fog, and my hands wouldn't stop trembling. Deputy Reynolds was sitting at the desk near the door. He looked up when I walked in, eyebrows raised. Hell, Tom, he said, you heading back out again? I frowned. What do you mean? He set down his pen, giving me this confused look. Didn't you already swing by the cemetery earlier tonight? Around 1. My chest tightened. What? He nodded slowly. Yeah, I was out near Ridge Road when I saw your car parked by the gate. Tried to radio you, but you didn't respond. Figured you were checking something out. I felt a pulse start behind my eyes. You're sure it was me? Same car, he said. Same number. 47. He leaned back in his chair, studying my face. You even waved when you drove past me about 10 minutes later. I stared at him, trying to find some kind of joke in his eyes. But he looked dead serious. Reynolds, I said quietly, I wasn't there at 1. I didn't get there until after 3. He tilted his head. No, man, it was you. Same cruiser, same uniform. You even had that busted taillight. I'd swear it. I felt my stomach drop. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock. Finally, I muttered something about checking the dash cam and walked away. The station felt wrong that morning, too quiet, too still. The lights buzzed faintly overhead. Every door I passed seemed just a little out of place, like it didn't belong to the same building. When I got to the locker room, I sat down and pulled the dash cam from my cruiser. The footage from last night played back smooth. Me driving through fog, headlights cutting through the dark. I skipped ahead to 3 a.m. to when I pulled up at the cemetery. My heart rate picked up just hearing the engine idled up. I let it play until I stepped out of the car, flashlight in hand. The camera stayed focused on the road and the fog. Nothing unusual. Then something shifted in the frame. Headlights appeared from the right side of the screen. Another cruiser pulling up beside mine. I leaned closer to the monitor. It looked identical. Same make, same model, same markings. The car stopped. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. He was wearing my uniform. Same hat, same jacket. Even the way he moved. It was like watching myself from outside my own body. But when the figure turned toward the camera, the face wasn't there, not in the way you'd think. It wasn't blacked out or hidden. It was just blurred, like someone had dragged static over it. Flesh and static, twisting together like a signal that couldn't decide what was showing. I felt a chill crawl up my neck. The second we walked to the back of the car, standing in the fog, motionless. The longer I watched, the worse it got. The static wasn't just over the face anymore. It was spreading across the body, flickering like bad reception. The figure turned toward my real car's dash cam, and for a second, I thought I heard something, a faint, broken sound. IT wasn't coming from the computer. It was coming from a room, from the hallway behind me that I turned fast. But there was no one there, just the dim hum of the fluorescent lights. When I looked back at the footage, the other cruiser was gone. The fog had swallowed everything that I scrubbed backward and forward on the timeline. But it made no difference. One frame was there. The next it wasn't. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the paused image of the empty road. That MY hand was shaking when I hit save and copied the clip to a flash drive. Before I could stand, the radio on my desk crackled to life. Unit 47, you out there? It was dispatched. I reached for the mic. Yeah, go ahead. Got a weird one for you, she said. Caller reports seeing a patrol car near the old cemetery again. Said it's just sitting there with the engine running. We don't have anyone assigned in that area tonight. I froze. What time? I asked. About 15 minutes ago. The static hissed softly through the speaker. You want to send someone else? She asked. I swallowed hard. No, I'll take it. I don't know why I said that. Maybe part of me needed to prove it wasn't real. Maybe part of me already knew it was. The drive back to Merrill Creek felt endless. The fog had rolled in again, thicker this time, like it had been waiting for me. Every mile marker looked the same. Every bend in the road familiar in a way that didn't feel right. When I turned onto the cemetery road, my headlights picked up the outline of another car through the mist. A cruiser to MY cruiser. I slowed, the tires crunching on gravel. The engine was idling quietly. The lights dimmed through the fog. I stepped out, flashlight in hand, and moved closer. My breath came out shaky, cloudy in the air. The license plate matched mine. Every dent, every scratch. It was identical. Even the little crack in the side mirrored. I circled to the driver's side. Someone was sitting in the seat. The window was fogged up from the inside, but I could see the shape of a man behind the glass. Still, upright, hands on the wheel. Sheriff's Department. I called. My voice wavered. Step out of the vehicle. No movement. I took a slow step forward. My boots crunched the gravel, echoing too loud in the quiet. I reached out, hand trembling, and tapped the window with my flashlight. The man inside turned his head toward me. The face was still static, not just blurred this time. It was alive, shifting, pulsing like hundreds of tiny black veins crawling under the skin. The mouth moved slowly, like it was trying to speak, but the sound that came out wasn't human. Just radio static, broken and distorted, spilling out of the car speakers. The headlights flickered once, and the figure reached up and pressed a hand against the inside of glass, and I saw the badge at MY badge. Same number that I stumbled back, flashlight falling to the ground. My breath came out in sharp bursts. The car engine revved once, like someone slammed the pedal, then died completely. When I dared to look up again, the car was empty. The door was open. Swinging gently, I backed away, heart pounding, until my legs hit the edge of my real cruiser behind me. The fog swirled around, erasing everything beyond a few feet. For a second, I thought I saw a figure standing just beyond the mist, the faint shape of a hat, the glint of a badge. But it was gone as soon as I blinked. The radio on my belt crackled. Unit 47, the dispatcher said, status check. I lifted the mic slowly. Yeah, I whispered. I'm here. Copy that, she said. Then, after a pause, did you find your double? I froze. What did you just say?" The line went dead. The only sound left was a hiss of static. Faint but steady, I looked down, and for a moment, I thought I saw my reflection in the car window again. But it wasn't me. Not exactly. The face looked older, pale, the eyes wrong. And when I turned to look behind me, there was nothing there, just fog. But in the quiet, I could still hear the faint hum of an idling engine, somewhere just out of sight. And it didn't stop until dawn that I told myself I was going back there to prove I wasn't crazy. That's what I said out loud, anyway. But deep down, I think I already knew something was waiting for me. It had been 3 nights since I saw the other cruiser, the one that looked exactly like mine, the one with a driver whose face was nothing but static and noise. 3 nights of sitting awake, staring at my badge, wondering if I was losing my mind. The others at the station didn't say much, but I could see in their eyes that quiet pity, the kind they give to a man they don't want to be around but can't quite bring themselves to avoid. They'd heard me screaming over the radio that night. They'd heard what I said, that I'd seen myself as, I went back to the old cemetery. I told myself I'd find proof. The fog was worse this time. It came in heavy waves, swallowing the road and the trees on both sides. The world felt smaller, boxed in. My headlights didn't reach more than a few feet ahead, just this pale cone of light moving through gray. The deeper I drove, the quieter it got. No crickets, no wind, just the hum of the engine. When the cemetery gate appeared through the fog, it looked exactly the same as before, that crooked iron arch, half sunk into the dirt, with vines growing through the letters. But something was different too. I couldn't tell what, not right away. Maybe it was the color of the sky, or how the fog seemed to cling to the metal. I pulled over, left the engine running, and stepped out. The air was wet, heavy. It smelled like rust and something faintly sweet, like rainwater mixed with old flowers. I walked through the gate, flashlight in hand. My boots sank into the soft ground. Each step made a quiet, squelching sound. The headstones looked like teeth in the fog. Some cracked, some half-buried, names worn away by years of weather. I passed the same collapsed headstone I'd seen before, the one with the fresh digging beside it. Only now the hole was filled in, packed tight. The dirt looked smooth, too smooth, like someone had been here recently. I knelt and brushed some of the loose earth aside. My glove came back wet. The soil wasn't just damp, it was cold, freezing, even, and then I saw it. The headstone had changed. Where the old name had been, there was now a new carving, sharp, clean, like it had just been done. That IT said my name, Thomas Weller. Below that, my badge number, 47, and underneath a date, tonight's date. My breath caught in my throat. I stumbled back, flashlight shaking in my hand. The beam trembled across the grave, catching on a wet glint of paint in the letters. I whispered. No, the radio on my shoulder crackled. Unit 47, the voice was distorted. Unit 47, respond. I froze. My hand went for the mic automatically, but I didn't answer. Something in the voice wasn't right. It was layered, like multiple voices were speaking to the same channel, overlapping, out of sync. Then it spoke again. Thomas Weller. It said my name in that same wrong, broken tone that I dropped the mic static poured out speaker, rising like a scream. My flashlight flickered, and for a second, I thought I saw someone standing behind the grave. A figure in uniform. I swung the light toward it, but there was nothing there, just fog. The static turned into words again. You never left. I turned and ran. The path that led back to the gate was twisted now. The trees leaned in closer, branches hanging low, clawing at my jacket. My breath came fast. The radio kept hissing behind me, voices whispering through the static, fragments of dispatch chatter, like they were replaying old calls I'd made. Copy that, 47. Cemetery perimeter clear. Subject found unresponsive. I hit the main road and climbed into the cruiser, slamming the door. The engine was still running, lights still on. For a moment, I felt relief, but when I looked out the windshield, the gate was still there. Right in front of me, I blinked confused. I put the car in reverse, backed up until I hit the curve of the hill behind me, then shifted the drive and pushed forward again. The tires kicked up gravel. The engine roared, and I passed through the fog, only to see the same gate appear again. Same road, same trees, same goddamn cemetery that I stopped the car, staring at the steering wheel. My pulse hammered in my ears that I tried again, reversed, turned, took a side path that cut through the woods. I drove for what felt like 10 minutes, maybe more, until the road bent back toward open ground. But when the fog thinned, the gate was there again, the same crooked arch, the same stone wall, the same graveyard. IT was like the world was folding in on itself. NY radio crackled again, louder this time. Unit 47, status check. I grabbed the mic. Dispatch. This is 47. The words died in my throat, because what came through the speaker next wasn't dispatch. That IT was me at MY own voice. Dispatch. This is 47. It repeated exactly the same pitch, the same breath between words that I dropped. The mic static flooded the cabin, sharp and violent, like metal scraping glass. The lights on the dashboard flickered. Then the headlights went out. All at once, darkness filled the cruiser. Thick and alive, I sat there in the silence, gripping the steering wheel. I could feel my own heartbeat in my palms. I wanted to turn the key again, but I couldn't make my hand move. Then I heard it, the voice right outside the window. You never left. It was a whisper, close enough that I could feel the condensation form on the glass. I turned slowly, the flashlight beam trembling as it caught the shape of something standing by the passenger door. IT was me, or it looked like me. Same uniform, same jacket, but the skin was pale, almost gray. The eyes were wide and glassy, reflecting the flashlight like marbles. The mouth opened, and that same static sound poured out. Rattling to the cabin, I slammed the door locks and shut my eyes. When I opened them again, the figure was gone, but the radio was still alive, whispering. 47, come in, come in. I grabbed the mic, voice breaking. This is 47. I'm trapped near Hollow Road. Something's. The radio interrupted me with my own voice again, overlapping mine perfectly, word for word. Then both voices said together, you never left. Something snapped inside me. I threw the mic across the seat and shoved the door open. I ran into the fog, not caring where I went, just desperate to get away from the car, the voice, the grave. But every direction I ran led me back. The fog shifted around me like a living thing. The gate would appear, fade, reappear. I ran past the same trees, the same uneven path, until my legs felt like they'd give out. And then I saw the grave again, the one with my name on it. The paint was dry now. There was a badge sitting on top of the dirt. Mind, I don't remember dropping to my knees, but when I looked down, my hands were covered in soil. My flashlight flickered, catching something carved into the back of the headstone. Words I hadn't seen before. Stay where you belong. The ground shifted beneath me. I felt it move, like something alive on the surface. The dirt sank an inch, then another that I scrambled backward, gasping. The flashlight slipped from my hand and rolled toward the grave. The beam landed on the name again, my name, and for just a second, the soil split open. A hand reached out, pale, mud-caked, familiar. That IT grabbed the flashlight and pulled it under. That I ran. This time I didn't look back. I ran until the fog broke, until I saw the faint orange of morning on the horizon. When I finally reached the highway, my cruiser was there, parked, engine off. The radio was silent, but when I sat inside, there was dirt on the seat and a single word written across the windshield in the condensation. Stay. I drove home with the sun rising behind me, but the feeling didn't leave, because when I glanced in the rearview mirror, just once, I saw the cemetery gate fading into the fog again, and standing in front of it was me, still, waiting to ask if I'd never left at all. I used to think the quiet hours on patrol were the safest. No calls, no movement, just the hum of the cruiser and the low chatter from dispatch. But after that night, I can't stand silence anymore. Silence isn't peace. It's waiting. That IT started around 2:17 a.m. I remember the exact time because the dashboard clock froze there, 2:17, and stayed like that for the rest of the shift. I was parked off County Road 9, engine idling low, rain starting to miss against the windshield. Dispatch had been quiet all night until I heard it, this soft hiss like static, but beneath it was a whispering voice at first. I thought it was bleed over, Interference from another channel. I reach the mic. Dispatch. This is Unit 12. I think I've got some feedback on the line. You reading me? No answer. I tried again, leaning forward, turning up the volume. The static grew louder, sharper, like a storm was sitting right on top of the tower. Then the whisper came again, clearer this time. 12, the way it said my call number made my chest tighten. It wasn't like a normal transmission. It was stretched, drawn out, like the word was being dragged through water. I said, "Say again." Silence. Then the voice softer. "Don't leave." I froze. My hand hovered over the mic a few seconds later. The channel snapped back to life. It was our regular dispatcher, Nancy. Her voice had that flat, tired tone we all knew too well. "Unit 12, be advised. Storm rolling in from the west. Might be interference on the channel. You get out there?" I swallowed hard. Yeah, I'm good. Copy that." The channel clicked off. For a while, I just sat there, staring through the rain. My headlights picked up the edge of an old barn and a fence line that disappeared into the fog. The world felt muffled, like someone had pressed cotton over my ears. Then, the whisper came again. This time, it wasn't through the radio. It was outside, somewhere past the barn, low and dragged into fog. "Don't leave." I stepped out of the cruiser before I could talk myself out of it. The air was cold enough to sting. My flashlight cut a narrow cone through the mist, the beam catching drops of rain that looked like falling glass. The sound stopped. I took another step forward, then another. My boots sank into the mud. The barn loomed ahead, half collapsed, the roof caving on one side. When I got close enough, I saw something hanging from one of the wooden beams. A radio, an old one, looked like one of ours from the 90s, sun-bleached, cracked speaker, cord half torn. I reached up, touched the mic, the radio hissed, and I heard her again. "Nancy, Unit 12 respond," but the voice wasn't coming from my cruiser. It was coming from the radio in my hand. "Nancy," I said quietly, "where are you transmitting from?" She didn't answer, just that same static. Then the whisper again. "Don't leave." The rain started coming down harder. I dropped the old radio and ran back to the car. Inside, the clock still read 2:17, but the radio light was flashing red. Incoming transmission. When I picked it up, the voice was already mid-sentence. "Can you hear me?" I knew that voice. I shouldn't have. It wasn't Nancy. It wasn't anyone at the station. That IT was my wife. She'd been dead 5 years. And she said my name. "Eli, please, don't leave me here." I dropped the mic, and the transmission ended BY morning. The storm had covered half the county. Most of the repeaters were down. So I volunteered to check the Old Hill Tower near Ridge Hollow. It hadn't been used in years. It was the original signal point before they moved operations close to town. The drive out there was rough. Mud, broken tree limbs, fog thick enough to erase the road. The cruiser's headlights felt like candles against a wall of gray. Every few minutes, the radio would crackle. Not static exactly, but something close to breathing. When I reached the base of the hill, I saw the tower through the mist, a rusted skeleton of steel and wire, blinking with one faint red light near the top. I stepped out. My boots hit something soft. I looked down. A trail of footprints, my size, same tread pattern, leading up toward the tower ladder. But I hadn't been here before. The prints were fresh that I followed them. Halfway up the hill, the wind picked up. It wasn't the normal kind of wind. It sounded like voices passing through metal. Faint, distant, impossible to catch fully. When I reached the base of the tower, I found the access door half open. Inside was a single light bulb swinging gently. Beneath it, an old dispatch console. The exact same model we'd used back when I started. IT was powered on. The speaker was hissing. I leaned close, and through the static, I heard her again. "Nancy, Unit 12, what's your status? You're off the map again." I pressed the mic. "Nancy, I'm at the Ridge Hollow Tower. There's equipment still running out here. Did someone activate it?" Static, then faintly, "You're not supposed to be there." The bulb flickered. And then I heard my wife's voice again, cutting right through Nancy's. "Eli, please come home." I froze. My throat tightened. The speaker kept alternating. Nancy's voice, then my wife's. overlapping like a broken recording. Ridge Hollow, come home. Storms worsening, please. The words tangled, distorted, until they just became noise, and then a different voice came through low. Mayo, rough, turn it off. It wasn't coming from the speaker. It was behind me that I turned, flashlight shaking, and no one was there. Just a ladder leading up to the repeater deck. Something was scraping against the metal above, slow, steady, like someone climbing. I pointed the beam upward, but the fog was too thick to see that I called out, "Who's up there?" No answer. The scraping stopped, then from above me, that same broken whisper, "Don't leave." The sound was too close. Too human that I backed away slowly. My heel caught on something, a wire, thick and coiled, stretching from the tower into the mud. I followed it with the light. It led to a black box buried halfway in the ground. The casing was cracked open, wires tangled and wet. Inside, a radio receiver, still glowing faintly that I knelt, wiping mud off the front panel, and saw the label, Unit 12, archive line.my numbered. I pulled the plug. The sound cut instantly, but not the whisper. That kept going, growing softer until it felt like it was inside my head. "Don't leave." The tower light flickered once, then died. I don't remember getting back to the car. Just a feeling of the road under me. Headlights bouncing off endless fog. But when I finally looked down at the clock, it still said 2:17 by the time I got back to town. Everything felt wrong. The streets were empty, power out, air heavy with humidity. My reflection in the side window looked pale, eyes sunken like I hadn't slept in days. AT the station. No one was there. Phones off the hook, monitors frozen on static. I called out for Nancy. Nothing. When I turned on the dispatch console, the line lit up immediately. Unit 12, her voice again. "Where have you been?" I hesitated. "Nancy." I was at the repeater tower. I found my line active there. "Someone." She cut me off. "That's impossible. That site was decommissioned 10 years ago." I know what I saw. Her breathing grew uneven. "Eli, listen to me carefully. You're not supposed to answer this line anymore." "What are you talking about?" "Because we buried that frequency." Static swallowed her words. The light on the console pulse red. The speakers let out a faint hum that grew until it was almost a moan. And then I heard the voice again, my wife's, crying, whispering, laughing. "Come home, Eli. Please. It's quiet here." I covered my ears, but it was inside my head now, like the air itself was carrying her voice. The walls of the station vibrated. The static changed pitch, like multiple transmissions layering on top of each other. Voices of every call I'd ever made, every cry for help, every unanswered call. And then I realized they were all saying my name. I ripped the power cable from the console. Silence. And for the first time in hours, I could hear the rain again, but the clock above the door still read 2:17, but I didn't go home that night. Couldn't. The thought of walking into that empty house, hearing her voice again. I couldn't take IT, so I drove, aimlessly, through fog, through dark, every few miles. I'd hear static hiss through the cruiser's radio, soft and patient, like it was waiting for me to answer at BY 4 a.m., or what I thought was 4 a.m. I found myself near the outskirts again, the open fields leading back to Ridge Hollow. Only this time, the tower light was gone. No red blinking, no signal, just black sky, and yet the radio lit up again. Incoming transmission, Unit 12, it was Nancy, only slower. Hollow, like someone replaying her through a tunnel. "Storm's over now, you can rest." The voice changed mid-sentence. "My wife again. Come home, Eli." Something in me broke then. I gripped the mic and said, "You're not her." Static answered. Then laughter, wet, echoing. The sound grew louder until the speakers blew. Smoke curled up from the dash. I stepped out of the car and stood in the rain, breathing hard. The world was completely silent again, and no wind. No crickets. No thunder. Just nothing. I turned in a slow circle and realized the fog wasn't fog at all. It was smoke, rising from the ground, curling around my legs. And in that smoke, faint shapes, silhouettes. Dozens of them. Some in uniform. Some in plain clothes. All holding radios. Their mouths moved in unison, whispering the same two words, "Don't leave." I backed away, tripped, hit the mud hard. My flashlight rolled from my hand, spinning until the beam caught the base of the tower. There was a body hanging from a ladder, uniformed, badge glinting in the light. Mind I ran, I don't even know where. My chest burned, lungs filled with wet air. The whispering followed, echoing from every direction. When I looked back one last time, I saw the figures fading into the smoke. Only one remained. Standing where the tower used to be, that IT was me. Holding the mic, I could see my mouth moving. And then the radio in my cruiser crackled back to life. Unit 12, status check. You get out there? Nancy's voice. Clear. Normal. I looked down at my wristwatch, .2:17 a.m. I picked up the mic, hand shaking. This is Unit 12. Copy. Static filled the cabin. Good copy, she said. You can rest now. The line went dead, and so did the clock. Just silence, just dead air. The storm that week never seemed to end. Every night, the sky cracked open and poured over the hills until the dirt turned to slick clay and the rivers swelled like they were angry. I'd been running night patrols out near the county's edge, keeping an eye on roads that washed out easy. That's when dispatch sent me out toward the old cemetery again. Said part of the fence had collapsed after the rain, and I didn't like that place. Even before all this, it made me feel like something in the air watched you back. But orders were orders. I took the truck up the gravel road. Tires sliding in the mud, the wipers fighting to keep up with the downpour. My floodlight swept over the trees, and every branch looked like a hand reaching. When I pulled up to the cemetery gate, the chain was hanging loose. The fence sagged low on one side where the earth had given way. I stepped out into the rain, boots sinking an inch deep. The beam from my flashlight caught the mist, turning it into a silver fog that swallowed everything just past 10 feet. I clicked on the floodlight from the truck, and that's when I saw it. A patch of ground near the collapsed section looked wrong. The earth was uneven, freshly turned. Not like it had caved in naturally, but like something had been dug up or buried recently. I moved closer, crouching beside the spot, rainwater trickling down my collar. The dirt there was darker, wetter. My boot pressed in and sank with a soft, sucking sound. And then I saw it half buried beneath the mud, pale against the dark earth, a piece of bone. IT was an animal. I've seen deer skulls, cow ribs, all kind of things that wash out after floods. But this looked too human, too smooth, too deliberate in shape that I remember whispering something under my breath, maybe a curse, maybe a prayer. My flashlight flickered once, twice, and then steadied again. The rain fell harder. I radioed in, told dispatch I'd found a possible unearthed burial, and that I'd secure the area until morning. But the line crackled so bad I could barely make out her reply. IT sounded like, "Don't dig." The voice didn't sound like dispatch. It sounded like a whisper behind the static. I turned, scanning the dark between the headstones. The rain muffled everything, but I swore I heard something moving out there. Slow, wet, like boots dragging through mud. I called out, "Sheriff's Department," but my voice felt small under the storm and no answer. Just the wind and the rain, and that faint dragging sound faded away toward the trees, and I stayed a few more minutes, pacing by the fence, feeling the weight of the dark pressing close. Then I saw something else, right beyond the beam of my light, a glint of metal. I leaned closer and realized it was a badge, rusted and half buried beside the bone. That I picked it up. The name on it was barely legible, but the number, it was mine. That I dropped it, just stood there, staring at it in the mud, while the rain washed the dirt from its surface. I told myself it was some trick, that maybe the badge had been lost here before, maybe it was an old duplicate or coincidence. But I couldn't shake the way the radio had said those words. "Don't dig." I backed away from that hole, eyes fixed on the bone, and when I turned to head back to my truck, the floodlight flickered again. For half a second, the shadows moved wrong, like someone was standing behind the nearest headstone, watching me. When I blinked, they were gone. I left the site that night with my hands trembling on the wheel, the radio hissing quietly beside me. But under the static, I could still hear something faint, almost rhythmic. It sounded like breathing, and then, just before I turned the radio off completely, a voice whispered to the static again, "You're standing where you shouldn't." The next night, I went back. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that it was just the storm messing with me. Or maybe I couldn't stop thinking about that badge, the way it looked so clean under the mud. The rain had eased up by then, leaving the world heavy with fog. I parked in the same spot, headlights cutting through the gray. The air smelled like wet stone and decay. When I walked through the gate, something felt off. The ground should have been torn up from the night before, but it wasn't. The section of fence was still collapsed, but the mud where I'd seen the bone was smooth again, like someone had filled it in perfectly with anno footprints. No shovel marks. Nothing. Just a flat patch of wet soil. I checked my phone for photos. I'd snapped one the night before, but the image was gone. Just static gray. Then the radio in my truck crackled again, only static at first. Then a voice. Soft, slow. Unit 23, you there? It sounded like dispatch, but her tone was wrong. Too calm. Almost like she was talking from far away. This is 23, I said. I'm at the site again. You sent anyone out here last night? Long pause. Then, negative. Why? I stared at the empty ground. The grave's been filled. Static hummed. Then the line went dead. I walked further in. The air got colder with every step, like the ground was breathing out frost. My flashlight picked up the names carved into old headstones, most so faded I couldn't read them. But one near the back caught my eye. The name had been scratched out, deep gouges where the letters used to be. Someone didn't want it remembered. And at the base of that headstone, half hidden in the wet grass, was a small pile of stones, each one stacked neatly, like a child's game. There were 7 of them. The last one on top had a dark smear across it. Red. That's when I heard it again. Breathing. Not steady. Not calm. Like someone trying not to be heard, I turned slowly, light sweeping the mist of N01 there. But the breathing didn't stop. It came from below me that I stepped back, my boots sinking into soft earth. The sound grew louder, wet and rasping, like lungs full of mud. I stumbled away, heart pounding. The radio clicked on again, though I hadn't touched it this time. It was a man's voice. You shouldn't have come back. Then silence. I turned and ran for the truck. The whole time, I could feel it. The ground shifting under me like something just beneath the surface was moving. When I reached the truck, I slammed the door shut and locked it. My reflection stared back at me in the window, pale, shaking. For a moment, I thought I saw someone standing behind me in the glass, a shadow that didn't belong to me. But when I looked, there was no one there. The floodlight from the truck flickered again, catching the rain-soaked headstones. And right in the beam where the filled-in grave had been, something was sticking out of the dirt. Not bone this time, the photograph that I got out slowly, reached for with shaking hands. It was water-damaged, old, but I could still make out 2 figures, me and my old partner, standing right where I was now, except he'd been dead for 3 years. The rain came hard again the next night, the kind that makes everything feel smaller, swallowed up by the dark. I told myself I wouldn't go back, that I'd file a report, let someone else handle it. But I couldn't stop thinking about that photograph. It wasn't possible that I burned down half a tank of gas driving circles, but I still ended up at that gate, like the road had decided for me. The moment I stepped out, the radio came alive. Not with static this time, but whispers. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew one of those voices. I'd know it anywhere at MY Partner, the one buried 2 counties over. Rick? I whispered. My breath fogged the glass as I leaned toward the mic. Rick, that you? No answer. Just a faint hum, like something breathing into the line. Then, almost like an echo, you left me there. I froze. The air felt heavier, the fog closing in around the fence. I turned my light toward the same grave. Only now, the marker was gone completely. No stone, no name, just a shallow dip in the ground, like something underneath had shifted. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe guilt, maybe madness. But I dropped to my knees and started brushing the mud away with my hands. The rain soaked my sleeves, filled my boots. The ground was soft, too soft. I dug until my nails hit with a coffin. The lid was rotted through, barely holding together. And on it, scratched into the surface with something sharp, was my name. I stumbled back, choking on rainwater, try and make sense of what I was seeing. The radio inside the truck screamed again, a distorted wail of overlapping voices. I could hear my own name being called, over and over. Unit 23, do you copy? Unit 23, return to base. But beneath that, under all the static, there was another voice. You never left. The earth shifted under me, and I realized the ground was hollow. It caved slightly with each step, like the space beneath it was empty or full of something that shouldn't move. Then I heard knocking point, 3 slow knocks from beneath the dirt that I backed up, slipping in the mud, eyes locked on that sinking grave. The radio went dead, replaced by the sound of my own heartbeat. The next flash of lightning lit up the whole cemetery, and for a split second I saw them. Figures standing between the headstones, all wearing uniforms, all without faces. Each one held a rusted badge, and their palm point one of them stepped closer. I saw the number stamped on the badge. Mind that I ran, didn't care where, just away from that place. The rain blurred everything, and no matter how far I went, I could still hear the whisper chasing me, soft, crawling through the air. You shouldn't have dug. When I finally made it back to the main road, the storm broke. I stopped the truck, breathing hard, soaked to the bone. I looked back at the rear-view mirror, expecting to see darkness, but the cemetery gate was right behind me, and through the rain and fog, I could see my own grave, freshly filled. Still WIT was around 2 in the morning when the call came through. The night had been dead quiet, the kind of silence that sits heavy on your chest. I was parked off County Road 9, sipping stale coffee from a thermos that tasted more like rust than caffeine. The radio had been nothing but white noise for an hour straight when suddenly, crack, hiss, static, then a voice. Unit 7, respond to domestic disturbance. Station 12. I frowned, staring at the radio like it had just insulted me. I turned the dial down and back up, thinking maybe it caught a stray transmission from another county. But the voice came again, clearer this time. Unit 7, you copy? Report to Station 12. Domestic disturbance. Code 2. I sat there for a long second, my hand frozen halfway to the mic. Station 12 didn't exist anymore. IT had burned to ground 5 years ago after a gas leak. I'd been there that night, standing in the pouring rain, while the roof collapsed inward. 3 officers never made out. MYO partner. Rick was one of them. SO yeah. When I heard that call sign, it hit like ice water. I grabbed the radio and pressed the transmit button. Dispatch. Repeat last transmission. Did you say Station 12? Static filled the cab. Then, copy Unit 7. Station 12. Domestic disturbance. Code 2. The voice was calm, steady, almost too calm. I recognized that tone. That was Lisa, one of our night dispatchers. But her voice sounded distant, like she was speaking through water. Lisa, come again, I said. Station 12's been gone for years. You sure that's the right code? No reply. Just a low hum of static. I turned off the radio for a second. My reflection in the window looked tired, ghost pale in the dim dash light. I told myself it was probably some radio interference. Maybe another department, somewhere reusing the number 12. But the problem was, Station 12's call frequency had been permanently retired. Nobody used it. Still, the job gets under your skin. You don't ignore a distress call so, against my better judgment. I started the engine and turned toward the old highway that led to what used to be Station 12. The road was slick from last night's rain. My headlights cut through a patchy fog that seemed to thicken the closer I got. Every few minutes, the radio would crackle again, soft voices, overlapping, like old recordings. I caught fragments here and there. Unit 4, we're losing power, fires spreading through the... I can't find the exit. I turned the volume down. I didn't need to hear any more ghosts tonight. When I reached the site, the first thing I noticed was how intact everything looked. There should have been nothing left, just the empty lot and a burned foundation. But in the beam of my headlights, I could see the old station's outline, faint through the mist. Like the building was still standing. That I blinked, leaned forward. The lights shimmered, and the illusion broke. The building was gone, just as it had been for years. But then a single light flicked on, faint yellow, Deep inside where the main office used to be, IT couldn't have been real. There was no power out here. I turned off the truck, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped into the cold air. The gravel crunched beneath my boots. Everything smelled of damp ash, that kind of charred scent that never really fades. The beam of my light landed on what was left of the front steps. Half-rotted wood, moss-covered. I climbed up, one step creaking under my weight, and called out, "Sheriff's Department. Anyone here?" No answer. Only the wind moving to the weeds, and I heard it, the soft, rhythmic tap of phone receiver being lifted and set back down. Once, twice, again. Coming from inside the ruins, that I moved closer, shining my light through what used to be the front door. My heart was pounding. The air felt charged like just before lightning strikes. The sound stopped. Then a phone rang, an old rotary phone. The kind we used to have in the squad room. The sound was so familiar it hurt. 3 rings. Pause. 3 more that I swallowed hard and called out again. "This is Unit 7. Identify yourself." Nothing that I stepped through the doorway. The beam of my flashlight cut through the dust and fog, catching bits of broken brick and collapsed beams. The air felt heavier inside, thick and stale, like no one had breathed in years. The phone kept ringing. I followed the sound down what used to be the main hall. The walls were scorched black, and the floor sagged under my boots. My light flickered, catching something on the far wall, an old bulletin board, half burned, still holding a few faded photographs. Point one of them was of me and Rick, standing out front of the same building. We were smiling. I don't even remember that picture being taken. The phone rang again, closer now. I turned the corner into what used to be the dispatch room, and stopped cold. The desk was still there, melted in places, but upright, and sitting on it, covered in dust, was an old beige rotary phone. IT rang again. Each chime echoed to the hollow building like it was alive, and I hesitated. My hand hovered over it. My gut screamed not to touch it, but curiosity is a hell of a thing. So I picked it up. For a moment, I didn't hear anything, just a faint hiss of dead air. Then Unit 7, the voice was so quiet I thought I imagined it. Responding, I froze. My throat felt dry. "Who is this?" Silence. Then a sharp breath on the other end. "Wet. Ragged. You were supposed to stay with us." My hand went numb. "What? Who is this?" The line went dead. The phone clicked softly, once, twice. Then, from the other side of the room, another one started ringing. That I turned, light shaking in my hand. There was another phone on the floor, half buried under debris, and it was ringing. Then another, and another. Each one overlapping the next, their tones slightly out of sync, echoing through the ruins until it felt like the whole building was crying out. I backed toward the door, heart slamming in my chest as I reached the threshold. Every phone stopped at once. The silence that followed was worse than the noise that I turned to leave. But something caught my eye on the cracked concrete wall near the exit. There, written in what looked like soot or ash, were 5 words. "You never answered the call." My flashlight sputtered out. Total darkness. And then the phone rang one last time. This one wasn't coming from inside the building. It was coming from the radio. In my truck, I ran. Didn't look back. I jumped in, slammed the door, and grabbed the mic the static cleared, and a single voice came through. IT was Rick's. "Unit 7, he said, his tone flat, distant. "Report to Station 12. My hands were shaking so bad, I almost dropped the radio. "Rick? That's you?" Static again. "You left us burning." I killed the radio. Just sat there, breathing hard, trying to convince myself it wasn't real, that it was interference. Memory. Guilt. Something explainable. But when I looked in the side mirror, I saw it, just for a second, at a reflection of the station behind me. Lit up, fully standing. Windows glowing gold like it used to, and inside 3 silhouettes. All of them looking straight at me. That I blinked, and it was gone. The lot was empty again. Just weeds, ashes, and the dark. Still, I swear I could smell the smoke. When I drove off, the radio stayed silent. But every few minutes, a soft click would come through, the sound of phone being picked up, and a voice, just barely above a whisper, saying the same thing over and over. "Unit 7, do you copy?" I parked just outside the caution tape, though by now, it wasn't much more than shredded plastic fluttering in the wind. The whole place looked like it was still smoldering. Even after all these years, Station 12, the air here never felt clean. It carried that same faint scent of ash and wet concrete, like the night had burned itself in the ground and never left. I shouldn't have come back. That's what I kept telling myself as I stepped through the rusted gate. The crunch of gravel loud enough to echo through the hollow space where the main hall used to be. The flashlight in my hand flickered, sputtered, cheap batteries, and I gave it a quick tap against my palm. The beam stuttered to life again, cutting a thin line to the dust that hung in the air like smoke frozen in time. Inside, the skeleton of the old building stood in silence. Charred beams jetted out like ribs, and the floor creaked under my boots. It was strange how the desks were still there, blackened, half melted, but still lined up the same way I remembered. I could still see them in their prime, stacks of call reports, a few empty coffee cups, that smell of printer ink and aftershave. That I moved toward what used to be the communications office. The flashlight beam swept across the room, landing on a pile of half-burned papers. My nameplate was still there on the corner of a twisted metal desk. The letters melted together, unreadable now. When I brushed the ash off the desk, a few sheets slid free and drifted to the floor. I crouched down and picked one up. The paper was stiff, brittle, but the ink was still visible. Dispatch log, October 19th, 2018. That night. Every line on the report ended the same way, unresolved. Dozens of calls, screaming static, cut connections. I remembered each one of them. I was on shift that night, alone at first, then no. I didn't want to think about what came after. I flipped through the stack, my heart starting to hammer against my ribs. Every page had the same black stamp, unresolved, until I reached the last one that someone had circled my name in red ink at the top of the page. The mark was thick, uneven, like whoever did it pressed down too hard. The ink had bled into the paper, still bright against the grate. That's when I heard footsteps, slow, measured, coming from above me. That I froze, that I tilted my flashlight upward, but the beam caught nothing but open air. The roof had collapsed years ago. I could see the stars through cracks. There was no above, just sky, but the sound kept going. Heavy boots against wood, a faint creak, a shuffle that I should have left then. I really should have. Instead, I whispered, "Hello?" My voice cracked a little, sounding too small in the silence that followed. The footsteps stopped and I waited. Nothing, just a faint hum of the wind crawling through the walls. Then something brushed against my shoulder. I spun around so fast the flashlight slipped from my hand and clattered to the ground. The beam rolled, slicing across the floor and hitting something. A pair of boots standing in the corner. I couldn't breathe for a second. They were burned, fused together at the top, sitting upright like someone had just stepped out of them. When I picked the flashlight back up, my hand was shaking. I aimed it higher, tracing the beam up the wall. That's when I saw it. More reports pinned to the charred boards with bits of wire and nails. Each one had a name. Officers, dispatchers, locals, people I remembered. And on each report next to status, someone had written one word in red ink. Gone. Except mine. Mine just said pending. I backed away, nearly tripping over a broken chair. My throat felt dry. My heart wouldn't slow down. I turned toward the exit, but the air outside the door shimmered. Heat waves like the fire was still burning there. Then I heard a voice on the radio. IT came from somewhere deep in the rubble. A burst of static first, then a soft, broken transmission. Unit 47, respond. I froze again. That was my call signed. I hadn't heard it since that night. The radio hissed again, the static sharp enough to sting my ears. Respond. Station 12 requesting assistance. Fire spreading. The words looped, glitching like a scratched record as I scanned the room, my flashlight beam bouncing off blackened glass and cracked walls. There was no radio here. Not anymore. The equipment had all been destroyed. Still, the voice came again. Respond. Closer now. IT wasn't coming from a device. It was in the room with me that I stumbled backward, hit the edge of a desk, and something metal fell to the floor. An old microphone. The kind we used to patch through emergency calls. The core was burned through, but the red light at the base flickered faintly. I could hear breathing on the other end. Slow, strained, wet. Unit 47, why didn't you answer? I grabbed the flashlight with both hands and aimed it around, searching for the source. The voice was right next to me now, whispering low, too close, like someone leaning behind my ear. That I spun again. Nothing, just smoke and blackened wood. But then the reports on the wall began to shift. One by one, the corners curled upward as if a breeze passed through, except the air was still. Then the papers began to move on their own, fluttering, peeling off the wall and falling to ground. Except for mine, that one stayed pinned in place. The red ink around my name was dripping now, slowly spreading down the page like fresh blood. Something inside me broke then. I ran. I didn't even look where I was going. I pushed through what used to be the hallway, ducked under fallen beams, past broken lockers, until I reached the back door. IT wouldn't budge. I threw my shoulder against it again and again until it gave way with a snap. The cold air hit me like water, thick with smoke and something else, dust, ash, and the faint smell of burned metal. When I looked back at the building, I saw a light inside, not fire, but a dim orange glow, pulsing in rhythm like a heartbeat. And through the shattered front window, I saw movement. A shadow standing behind my old desk. IT was wearing a headset. For a second, I thought it was me. Same uniform, same badge. Then the headset crackled. Unit 47, we've been waiting. The flashlight flickered again, then died completely. That I don't remember running back to my car. I just remember the sound. The whisper of static following me all the way down the road, chasing me through the speakers, through the silence. When I finally stopped to catch my breath miles away, I realized the radio on my cruiser was still on. IT shouldn't have been. The display was blank, but I could hear it, faintly beneath the hum of the engine. Unresolved, a single word, repeating. Over and over that I turned the radio off. But even now I still hear it. Late at night, when the world goes quiet, that voice crawling through the static, whispering from somewhere deep in the ash, pending, and every time I close my eyes, I see that circle of red ink, my name, bleeding through the page, the only one left unfinished. That I shouldn't have gone deeper into the station. That's what my gut told me. Every step I took past the charred stairwell, every breath of that stale, chemical air that clung to the back of my throat. But curiosity is a strange thing. It pushes you past fear, until fear catches up. The hallway leading to the old locker room hadn't changed much. The fire had scorched everything, the ceiling tiles, the floor, the walls. But somehow, the lockers themselves still stood in neat rows. A few doors hung open, their hinges rusted, the metal warped from heat. Others were sealed shut, as if the flames had welded them closed forever. The smell was different here. Less smoke, more dust, like the air hadn't moved in years. I waved my flashlight around, watching the beams scatter across the soot. Each locker number was barely visible under the grime. 12, 14, 16, and then there was number 19, my old locker. For a second, I just stared at it. The paint was blistered and peeling, but the number was still clear, black marker on a silver plate. I reached out, running my thumb across the metal. It was cold, colder than the air around it. When I gripped the handle, it stuck for a moment, like something was holding it from inside. I pulled harder, and the door creaked open with a deep metallic groan that echoed down the hall. The smell hit me first. Not rot, not smoke, something in between, like wet ashes. Inside, everything was exactly how I'd left it. My spare shirt, still folded, a coffee mug with a cracked handle, my old flashlight, all of it dusted over, frozen in time, and then the photo that IT was taped to the inside of the locker door, a group picture, me, the rest of the team, back when we were still whole. Before the fire. I stared at it for a long time. We all looked so normal, laughing, posing in front of the dispatch desk. I remembered the day we took it. The captain had made a dumb joke right before the camera went off, and everyone started laughing. But something was wrong with the photo now. The longer I looked, the more I realized that not everyone was laughing. My face, my reflection in that glass, wasn't smiling IT should have been. I remembered smiling that day, but the version of me in the picture just stared straight ahead, eyes dull, expression blank. That I leaned in closer. The glass of the photo frame caught my flashlight's beam, and for a second, I saw my own reflection layered over the photo. But then, it moved. That MY reflection smiled. slowly. Wrong, and I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I took a step back, my pulse thudding hard in my ears. The reflection, the one in the photo, kept smiling. Wider now, teeth showing, and behind it, I saw movement, a faint trail of smoke coiling through the image, twisting behind the heads of the others. It slithered between them like it was alive, blurring faces as it passed, until it reached me inside the photo. And then the smoke seeped out. That I blinked hard, thinking maybe it was dust from the flashlight beam. But no, it was real. I could see it leaking from behind the photo's glass, curling outward, faint and gray, like breath on a cold day. IT slid down the locker door, then up again, swirling into a thin shape that almost looked like a hand MY's stomach turned. I took another step back. My flashlight flickered. Then I heard a soft, wet sound, like breathing through ash. You left us. The voice came from the direction of the locker. Quiet, raspy, broken by static. I almost dropped the flashlight. Who's there? Nothing. Just silence. Then the locker door slammed shut. I jumped, hitting my shoulder against the wall behind me. The echo of the metal clanging rang through the hallway like a gunshot. I rushed forward, grabbed the handle, and yanked it open again, but the inside was empty. The photo was gone. Everything was gone. Just black that I shined my light inside, and for a moment, I thought the darkness was moving, breathing. I reached in, my fingertips brushing something smooth and cold. When I pulled it out, my hand was shaking. That IT was a photograph, except now I was the only one in it. All the others, every face, had been burned away. The edges were curled, the surface warped, but my image remained clear as ever, and I was still smiling. That I dropped IT. IT hit the floor softly, face up. My flashlight beam caught again, and for just a heartbeat, I swear I saw my reflection blink. That I ran. Down the hall, past the offices, through the dark where my light couldn't keep up. Every step echoed too loud. My breath came in sharp bursts. I didn't stop until I reached the main corridor. But the smell followed me, smoke and dust, thick and suffocating. I turned back once, just for a second, and the beam of my flashlight caught the far end of the hallway. The locker door was open again, and something stood beside IT. IT was faint, just the outline of a figure, shoulders hunched, head tilted slightly. I couldn't make out a face, only the shape of someone wearing a headset. That IT was holding something. The photograph. That I blinked, and it was gone. I didn't move for a long time after that, just stood there listening. The wind moaned softly through the broken ceiling, dragging loose ash across the tiles. Somewhere deep in the station, a door creaked open, then shut again. Eventually, I forced myself to move. I needed air. I needed to get out. When I stepped outside, the night felt heavier than before. The fog clung to my clothes, seeping into my lungs. That I sat on the hood of my car, staring at the old station's shadow against the horizon. And that's when I noticed something new. That I, in the reflection of the windshield, I saw myself. But behind me, through the faint mist, there were others, 0.6 of them, standing where the entrance used to be. All of them burned black around the edges, their faces hidden by smoke. They didn't move. They just watched, and in the glass, I saw that same wrong smile stretching across my face again. Only this time, I felt it too, like something inside me had caught up, something that had been waiting all this time, back in that locker, back in the ashes of Station 12. Finally crawling its way out, I looked down at my hands, still trembling. They smelled like dust and iron. When I turned the key in the ignition, the radio crackled to life on its own. No static this time, just a faint, rhythmic breath, and then a whisper. Pending, I stared at the station one last time. The fog shifted, curling through the air in shapes that almost looked human. Then, from somewhere far away, maybe from inside the building, maybe from inside the radio, I heard it, a single laugh on why laugh, and the smell of smoke drifted closer again like the fire had never gone out. When I stepped into the dispatch room, it was like the air changed. It felt thicker, heavy, almost like stepping underwater. My boots made soft, crunching sounds against broken glass, and the smell of old wires and wet ash hit me all over again. This room used to be the heart of the station. I remembered sitting here on slow nights, half asleep, coffee cooling in my hand, the steady hum of the consoles filling the silence. Now, all that was left were blackened desks and melted screens, except for 1.1 console still had powered AT first. I thought it was my flashlight making the buttons glint, but then I saw the faint green light flicker on the panel. The screen came to life with a sharp pop of static. I froze. The whole building had no power, no working grid. I checked that when I came in, the headset on the desk gave a faint hiss. Then a voice came through, clear and calm. Unit 47, welcome back. I stopped breathing for a moment. That was my old call sign. Nobody used it anymore. Nobody even should have known it. The voice wasn't robotic, but it wasn't human either. Too smooth, too level. Dispatch? I said, my voice cracking against the quiet. Who is this? No answer. Just soft static that I took a step closer, reaching for the headset. The mic was half melted, and the plastic was brittle under my fingers. I could hear faint whispers behind the noise, like someone was trying to talk but couldn't get through. Then the lights came on, every single one of them. The whole dispatch room exploded in white light, harsh and sudden. I flinched, covered my eyes for a second, and when I looked again, the room wasn't empty anymore. There were people. Uniformed deputies at their desks, writing reports, talking, laughing quietly. The air felt warm now, filled with the low buzz of chatter and ringing phones. It was like nothing had ever happened, like the fire never came. For a moment, I almost believed it. Then I noticed their faces or the lack of them. Each figure moved like they belonged there, completely unaware of me, but their faces were just smooth skin, pale, featureless, blank. No eyes, no mouth. Just a faint impression of where a face should be that I took a slow step back. My chest tightened point one of them walked right past me. Close enough that I felt the air move, smelled the faint scent of burnt coffee and smoke on his uniform. His radio crackled as he passed, whispering something I couldn't make out. Then, one by one, the others started to look up from their desks, or maybe turn was a better word. Their heads shifted in unison toward me, even though they had no eyes to see with. The voice came to the headset again. Unit 47, we've been waiting. I felt something cold slide down my spine. My hands were trembling now, sweat mixing with the dust on my palms. What do you want? I whispered. The static deepened, warbling and alive. The lights above me flickered once, twice, and the figures started to move again, faster this time. One was pacing near the whiteboard. Another was shuffling papers that weren't there. Then, without sound, they all stopped again. The figure nearest the console turned toward me, and then it reached for the headset. My heart slammed against my ribs. I backed away as the figure lifted the headset slowly and placed it over where its ears should have been. The movement was jerky, mechanical. When it pressed the mic button, the voice that came through the speakers wasn't from this world. You left your post, 47. I shook my head. That night, I tried. You left us. I staggered back, bumping into a chair. It fell over, the crash echoing too loud. I turned toward the door, but it was gone. Just a wall now. The dispatch lights dimmed to a sickly yellow glow. I could hear the soft hum of the old air conditioner. Something that hadn't worked in years. I turned back to figures. They were gone too. The desks were empty again. The console was the only thing still lit. The screen pulsed faintly, showing my name. Officer, Daniel Hayes status. Active location, Station 12. Dispatchee stared at it, my breath fogging up the glass. My name flickered, like the system couldn't decide if it should still exist. Then another line appeared beneath it, that time of death. 312 and Memi's stomach dropped. I stumbled backward, shaking my head. No, that's wrong. That's not. The voice cut me off. It's time to check back in. The lights went out. For a second, I was surrounded by pitch black. Only the faint glow of the console screen cutting through the dark. I could hear something moving now. Faint footsteps circling me. Slow, deliberate. Who are you? I said, my voice cracking. The static hissed like a deep breath. Then dispatch. The voice sounded closer now. Not to the headset anymore, but right behind me. I turned fast, swinging the flashlight, and froze. There was a figure standing in the doorway. A uniformed officer, hat tilted low, badge catching the faint green light from the console. For a split second, I thought I recognized him. Same build, same stance, like someone I used to know. Then he lifted his head. His face was nothing but smoke. I stumbled back, flashlight shaking in my grip. The figure stepped forward, one slow stride after another, boots clicking on the tile. As he moved, the air around him shimmered with heat, like standing too close to a fire. He stopped in front of me. The radio on his chest hissed softly. Then the same voice, that calm, unfeeling tone, came through again. Unit 47, you're late. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't think. The world felt warped around us, like time itself had folded in. I'm not. The figure leaned closer. I felt cold air brush my cheek, like wind coming through a cracked door. You never signed off. And then everything stopped and no sound. No light, no air. The static cut out completely, replaced by the faint hum of the power dying again. When I blinked, the figure was gone. The door was back. The console screen was dark. I stood there for a long time, staring at the headset lying on the desk. The cord was burned through, melted clean in half, but faintly, from somewhere deep in the radio, a whisper bled through again. Unit 47, I grabbed my flashlight, backing toward the hall. My heart wouldn't stop pounding. When I reached the door, I glanced back one last time. The green light blinked once more on the console. This time, the words were different at transmission, complete signing OFF. Unit 47, the power cut for good. And in that final moment before the darkness swallowed the room, I swear I saw a movement in the reflection of the screen. Someone sitting at the desk, wearing my uniform, and smiling. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the badge in my hand. The metal felt cold, even though the room around me was warm. Too warm. The edges were blackened, like it had been pulled out of fire, but my name, Daniel, was still perfectly carved beneath Station 12. I ran my thumb over it, trying to remember if that engraving had always been there. It didn't feel right. It didn't look right either. My badge had always been plain. I was sure of it. Just my number and my name. No fancy carving, no deep etching. But this one looked permanent, like it was meant to last forever. When I finally looked up, the fog outside had thickened. I couldn't even see the parking lot anymore. Just white, endless mist pressing against the glass doors. I tried the handle, locked. I tried again, harder this time. Nothing. It didn't even rattle, like it had been welded shut. That I took a deep breath, trying to think. Maybe I was trapped inside because of structural damage. Maybe the place had shifted when I walked through. Maybe I could find another exit. That's what I told myself, maybe. But deep down, I knew better. The voice came again, soft through the static overhead. Unit 47. I froze. The sound wasn't coming from the dispatch console anymore. It was echoing through the intercom system from the whole building. Unit 47, your shift isn't over. That voice, it wasn't just noise anymore. It knew my name. It used it like a memory. That I looked up at the ceiling. The lights flickered once, then went out completely, leaving only the faint glow from the fog pressing against the glass. My own reflection looked back at me in the door, pale and ghostly, like I was already halfway gone. Dispatch? I called out, trying to sound calm. Who is this? No answer, just a low hum through the speaker. Then a whisper, come back to your post. Something about those words made my stomach twist. My post. I turned around and looked at the main hallway, the one leading back toward the control room, the locker area, and the remains of what used to be my desk. Everything was quiet now. Even the creaks and drips from before had stopped. The silence felt heavy, like it had weight. As I started walking, the floor beneath me seemed softer than before, like the ash and dust had thickened. My boots left faint prints in the soot. Every step echoed like I was walking inside a tunnel. When I reached the hallway corner, I noticed something that hadn't been there before. The wall, cracked, scorched, was now clean. The paint was fresh. The framed photo of the Station 12 team hung perfectly straight. But that photo, it wasn't the old one. It was new. That I stepped closer. My chest tightened as I looked at it. There were faces in that picture I recognized. Men and women I'd worked with before the fire. Some I hadn't seen in years. Some I'd seen in coffins. And right there in the center, standing straight with a hand on his belt, was me. The glass was cracked across my face, right to my eyes, and I reached out and touched it, my fingers shaking. The surface felt warm. Then something moved behind the glass, like the faint ripple of smoke shifting just under the surface. I jerked my hand back. The photo stayed still. But for a split second, I swear I saw my reflection blink. I walked faster after that, trying not to look at the walls anymore. The building was changing around me, not just old and broken now, but alive. The air felt heavier, thick with that burnt, chemical smell I hadn't forgotten from 5 years ago. Then I saw it again, the console room, glowing faintly in the dark. The green light on the old radio panel flickered like a heartbeat. Unit 47, the voice said again, closer this time. You were supposed to respond. I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry. Respond to what? Domestic disturbance. It said, almost tender. Station 12 dispatch. Do you copy? That was the same call. The one that started all this. The one that came through tonight. From a station that burned down 5 years ago, the MY hand started to shake. This isn't real, I muttered. This place is gone. You're gone. The radio crackled like laughter. You never left, Daniel. The lights above me burst on for half a second, and in that flash, I saw them. Figures, lined up behind the dispatch desk, standing perfectly still. They were wearing our uniforms, Station 12 patches, name tags, radios. But none of them had faces, just smooth, pale skin where features should have been. When the lights flickered off again, I could still hear them breathing. Slow, rhythmic, in sync. I backed up until my heel hit something metal, a chair. It slid and hit the ground with sharp clang. The sound echoed down the hall, and for a moment, everything was quiet again. Then one of the radios on the desk crackled to life. Unit 47, the voice repeated, quieter now. Take your seat. Something about that phrase made my knees weak, because that was my seat. I used to sit there every night, logging calls, answering dispatch, waiting for emergencies that never stopped coming. And now, the headset was sitting there again, waiting. Smoke curled up from under the desk. Faint at first, then thicker, dark. It had a pulse, almost like it was breathing too. The smell filled my lungs, sharp and bitter. Just like that night in 2018, I don't know why I did it. Maybe out of habit, maybe out of guilt. But I sat down. The chair creaked beneath me and the radio light flared green again. Station 12 dispatch. I said softly, almost automatically, Unit 47 responding. The static on the other end faded. Then a woman's voice came through. I recognized it immediately. Officer Ruiz. She died in the fire. Good to have you back, Danny. My breath hitched. Ruiz? That's not possible. Her voice was calm, almost kind. We've all been waiting. Shift never ended. I looked down at the console. The buttons were glowing now, one by one. Each labeled line showed a name, Ruiz. Carter, Miller, Jensen, every one of them marked active. The line beside my name, Daniel Hargrove, Unit 47, blinked red that I pressed it without thinking. The world went still, and then I heard the sound I've been trying to forget for 5 years. The explosion, the roaring heat, the screams that IT wasn't memory anymore. It was happening again. The walls around me rattled. The glass shattered inward, and the air filled with that thick black smoke. The station was burning, alive again, just like that night that I stood up coughing, choking. The faces, those faceless things, turned toward me. Their mouths open now, wide, black voids that screamed without sound, and I stumbled toward the main hall, toward the front doors. The fog outside still waited, swirling like something alive. I slammed into glass, pounding with both hands. Through the smoke, I saw my reflection again. Only it wasn't me. It was wearing my uniform, my badge, but it was smiling. Shift never ended. It mouthed through glass. And then, the door unlocked. I stumbled out into the fog, gasping for air. But the world outside wasn't the city. It wasn't anything. Just white mist in every direction, swallowing the sound of my own breath. Behind me, Station 12 still burned, yet it didn't throw any light. The flames were silent, colorless, like they belonged to another world, I looked down at the badge again. The metal had cooled. The engraving had changed. IT no longer said Daniel. It said vacant. And when I turned back, I saw someone standing in the fog, wearing my face, holding my radio, walking back toward the station. The doors closed behind him. The lights inside flickered once, then went dark. And I realized maybe I never made out 5 years ago. Maybe no one did. Because somewhere through the static of my radio, a voice whispered again, calm, familiar, final, Station 12, standing by. I got the first call in early October, right before sunset, the air already carrying that damp chill that seeps into your bones. A woman named Carla from town said someone had been standing by the tree line during her uncle's funeral. Said he was tall, motionless, just standing there where the woods start to rise behind the cemetery fence. She said she didn't see his face. None of them did. But everyone felt him, like a weight in the air, like someone breathing right next to them, even though no one was there. I wrote off at first. Small town, small talk. People see things when grief hits them hard. Still, I drove down to the graveyard after dusk. The grass was slick with dew, and the mist hung low, curling around the headstones like it was alive. I remember thinking how quiet it was. No crickets, no wind, just that heavy silence that feels wrong when you notice it. I checked the perimeter fence. Nothing, just the woods, thick, dark, endless. Then I noticed something strange. Every bird had stopped singing the moment I stepped near the tree line. The caretaker, old man Haskins, came out with a lantern. His hand trembled when he spoke. You heard about him too, didn't you? Who? I asked. He pointed toward the woods. The tall one. Been coming here near every funeral. Just stands there till the last soul leaves. I looked where he pointed, but there was nothing, only shadow and mist. When I got back to the station, I decided to check the graveyard camera. We had one, an old security setup that pointed straight at the burial plots for vandalism prevention. The footage was grainy. Static hummed across the screen. AT first. Nothing stood out. Mourners in dark clothes. The priest saying his words. The casket lowered into the ground. Then the crowd started to leave, one by one. That's when I saw it. Something by the tree line. Not a person exactly. Just a darker patch of darkness. It didn't move. It didn't flicker. It stayed perfectly still for hours. The longer I watched, the worse the feeling got. My throat went dry. The static on the monitor sounded louder, like something was whispering underneath it. When dawn broke in the footage, that shape was gone. That I went back frame by frame, hoping it was just bad exposure. But no matter how far I zoomed, no matter what time I stopped, the shape remained. I told myself it was a trick of the light. Trees can play games with your eyes when shadows stretch long enough. But deep down, I didn't believe that. The next day, another report came in. Same thing, different funeral, different family. They said he was there again, by the woods, half hidden behind a dead birch, watching, always watching. And for the first time in years on this job, I felt something I couldn't explain. Not fear exactly. Something colder. Something that sits in the back of your throat and waits. Like it knows your name. IT was about a week later when I saw myself. The cemetery was empty, fog crawling over the grass like spilled milk. I parked my cruiser by the gate and walked in with my flashlight. Something about the air felt wrong. Heavy, like walking underwater. Every step was muffled. I passed the same row of graves I'd been to 100 times. But that night, they looked different, smaller somehow, like they were sinking. When I reached the center path, I saw a movement, a silhouette, tall, still, standing between the headstones. AT first. I thought it might be Haskins. I shouted his name. No response. The figure didn't flinch, didn't sway, just turned its head, slow, like it was curious as to why a flashlight trembled in my hand. The beam hit him square in the chest. Only there wasn't a chest. Not really. It was like the light passed through him, bending just slightly, like smoke trying to remember the shape of a man. He turned, slow as death, and walked into the woods that I don't know why I followed. Maybe I was trying to prove something to myself. Maybe I just wanted to know what the hell was happening in my town. The branches closed around me as I went deeper. The air got colder. My boots sank in the mud with every step, leaving prints that filled with dark water. Then I realized something that made my stomach twist. There were other footprints, bare feet, deep ones, leading further ahead. I stopped and listened. No birds, no insects, no wind. Then I heard it, breathing, not mine, slower, deeper, coming from somewhere ahead. I whispered into the dark. Who's there? Nothing, just the sound of breath, steady, patient. That I raised the flashlight again. The beam hit trees, moss fog, nothing else. But I could feel him watching. Something brushed against my sleeve. I spun around. No one was there. I kept walking until I reached a small clearing. The ground there was soft, sunken, like something had been standing there for a long time. I in the center of that patch was a small wooden cross. Old, burned at the edges. No name, no date. The breathing stopped. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then behind me, I heard wet footsteps. Slow, heavy. When I turned, the flashlight flickered once, twice, and then died. Darkness swallowed everything. I don't remember how long I stood there, frozen, waiting for something to touch me. But nothing did. When the light came back on, the clearing was empty. The footprints behind me were gone. Only mine remained. That I went back the next day. Couldn't stop thinking about that clearing. The woods looked different in daylight. Harmless, almost. But I followed the same trail, boots crunching through frost, until I found again. That's when I saw the cabin. It was small, half-rotted, covered in vines. Looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. The door was hanging open, swaying slightly in the breeze that somehow didn't reach me. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and something sour. My flashlight beam slid over a dusty table, some broken bottles, and a single chair tipped over. Then I saw the wall. Every inch it was covered in photographs, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all of me, some from patrol, some from my house, some from places I couldn't even remember going, different nights, different angles, always from behind trees, always from a distance out on the last photo, the one pinned right in the center. My eyes were blacked out with thick marker. I felt the floor sway beneath me. My breath caught in my throat. That's when I heard something shift upstairs. A soft, dragging sound. My flashlight flickered again. I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Just the slow creak of floorboards above me. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. But something, curiosity, fear, whatever, kept me still. When I finally moved toward the stairs, something caught my eye. On the desk near the wall, there was a small recorder. I pressed play. Static hissed. Then a voice came through. My own. Can't sleep. He's outside again. Watching. I think he wants me to follow. I stopped the tape. My hand was shaking so bad, I almost dropped it. I'd never recorded that. I didn't even own a recorder like that. Something thumped upstairs. Hard. That was enough. I bolted out of the cabin, branches clawing at my arms. When I looked back, smoke was seeping from the cracks in the cabin walls, like it was exhaling. When I reached the road, I stopped and looked down at my boots. The mud on them wasn't from today. It was dry, cracked, like it'd been there for years. That I burned the photos that night, every last one. The flames curled and hissed, the paper turning black and curling in on itself. For a moment, I thought I saw faces in the smoke, my own distorted. When I got back to my car, the forest behind me felt alive. The wind howled through the trees and the shadows moved like they were breathing. I started the engine and hit the headlights. That's when I saw him, standing behind my cruiser. Tall, motionless, the same shape I'd seen in the footage. Only now I could see his face, or thought I could. The skin was pale, stretched too thin. The eyes hollow, empty, but aware that I froze, hand on the gear shift. The headlights flickered. He didn't move. Then slowly, he raised a hand, not to reach, not to threaten, just a wave, and I blinked, and he was gone. And I slammed the car into drive and tore down the dirt road, the trees whipping past on both sides. But the fog followed. It poured through the trees like a living thing, clinging to the car, pressing against the windshield. When I finally hit asphalt, I stopped and tried to catch my breath. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't even light a cigarette. That's when I saw him again. In the mirror. Not behind me this time. In a reflection that my own face, older, thinner, and smiling that I turned around. Nothing there. But when I looked back at the mirror, the reflection was still smiling that I reached up to touch my face. The reflection didn't move. The air went cold. My breath fogged up the glass. And behind that reflection, faint but real, stood the tall figure. Watching, I don't remember what happened after that. Maybe I blacked out. Maybe I drove home and tried to pretend it didn't happen. But I know this much. Every night since then, when the sun dips low and the woods turn black, I can feel him out there, standing where the trees meet the graves, waiting for the next funeral. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I see him standing behind me, smiling with my face, because maybe he isn't watching anymore. Maybe he's becoming. Tea was just after sundown, when they told me I'd have a new partner for the shift. The storm from earlier had left the air heavy, damp, the kind that clings to your clothes long after the rain stops. The dispatcher's voice came through the static, soft but steady. Unit 47, you'll be riding with a new recruit tonight. Name's Dean. I remember grumbling under my breath. I've been doing this job long enough to hate breaking in rookies. They talk too much, or not at all. Either way, it's always the same. Nerves, bad jokes, trying to act tougher than they are. But when I saw him standing by the cruiser, hands in his pockets, he didn't look nervous. Just calm. He had that clean, pressed uniform look, collar straight, shoes polished, hair too neat for a guy working night patrol. His face was young but not fresh. Something about it looked tired, familiar, even that he smiled when he saw me. That polite kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "You're Officer Hayes, right?" he said. "Yeah," I replied, unlocking the car. "You must be Dean." He nodded, sliding into the passenger seat. The door shut softly, no slam, no rush. Everything about him felt deliberate, like he was moving through a memory instead of the present. The rain started again as we pulled out of the lot. Not heavy, just a slow drizzle that made the roads glisten under the headlights. The first few miles, we didn't talk. The radio hissed quietly, the wipers clicking back and forth. Then he said something that stuck with me. "I've been here before." I glanced over. "What do you mean? At the station?" He hesitated. "No, this route, these roads." "Well," I said, forcing a laugh, "it's a small town. You probably drove through it before training." He just looked out the window. "No, I mean, I remember it." That's when I felt it. The first flicker of something wrong. He couldn't have been here before. The last rookie they sent me came from another district, over 2 hours away. We don't get transfers from inside the county anymore. But I didn't press it. Sometimes people say strange things their first night. The quiet can mess with you. Still, as the hours went on, I kept catching him staring out into the dark, like he was trying to recognize something that wasn't there. We were about halfway through the shift when dispatch called a routine check. Perimeter patrol at the old cemetery off Hollow Creek. It wasn't unusual. The fence there gets damaged after storms. And the place has a reputation for drawing in teenagers looking to scare themselves. I groaned when I heard it. Lucky us. I muttered. Dean didn't say anything. But when I looked at him, he was already staring out the windshield, like he knew exactly where we were going. The cemetery sat behind a narrow gravel road, half hidden by oaks. The gate creaked when I pushed it open, the hinges screaming against the wind. The rain had stopped, but everything was still wet, the air thick, smelling of moss and rust. Dean followed me without a word. We moved our flashlights over the headstones, the beams sliding across names worn down by time. Most were so old you could barely read them. I've been there dozens of times before, but that night it felt different. The fog was thicker, the ground soft underfoot, the silence pressing down harder than usual. About halfway through the inspection, Dean stopped. He wasn't looking around like I was, not scanning, not checking perimeter. He was staring straight ahead, toward a row of graves I'd never paid attention to. "Something wrong?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just started walking, slow, steady, like he was following something invisible. "Dean," I called out, "where are you going?" He didn't turn around. I followed him through the mist. boots sinking into the wet earth. My light caught glimpses of names, cracked stone, half-buried markers. The air got colder the deeper we went. Then he stopped. Right in front of a grave I swear I'd never seen before. IT was newer than the rest. The stone clean, edges sharp, like it hadn't been there long. The soil around it was darker, softer, as if it had been recently disturbed. Dean stood there, breathing slow. His head tilted slightly. He whispered, "Here." I frowned. "What do you mean, here?" He turned to me, finally turned, and his expression was off. Not scared, not calm, just blank. "This is the one," he said. I lifted my flashlight toward the headstone. The beam slid across the carved letters, and for a second, I thought I was seeing it wrong, that NY name. Officer Daniel Hayes. The date underneath, blurred by rain, but the year looked wrong. Too recent that I took a step back, the mud pulling at my boots. "What kind of joke is this?" I said. Dean didn't move, but I grabbed his shoulder, spun him around. "You think this is funny? Some kind of rookie hazing crap." He didn't react. Didn't even blink. Then, softly, almost like he was talking to himself, he said, "I told you I've been here before." The wind picked up, carrying a smell I can't explain. Not rot, not smoke, but something old. Like the inside of a coffin that's been sealed too long. And I turned my flashlight back to the grave. The soil had shifted, just slightly, but enough to notice. Like something underneath had moved. That's when I heard it. A faint scraping sound. Right under our feet, I froze. Dean didn't. He just kept staring, his lips moving like he was whispering to someone underground. "Stop," I said. "Back up. Now." He didn't. The sound grew louder. Wet earth sliding against itself. Something pushing. "Dean!" I shouted, grabbing his arm. He looked at me then, but the expression on his face, it wasn't right. His eyes were unfocused, mouth trembling like he was holding back a smile. And then he said something I'll never forget. "You shouldn't be here. Not again." I stumbled back. What the hell does that mean? He didn't answer, just turned back toward the grave and whispered my name. The scraping stopped. Silence. Heavy. Final. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The fog hung thick, swallowing the light. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then Dean took a step closer to the headstone, reached down, pressed his hand against the soil. The ground gave a low, hollow sound. Like air escaping from a lung, he whispered something I couldn't hear. And then he stood up, brushing the dirt off his hand. "It's done," he said quietly. "What's done?" I asked. He didn't look at me, just started walking back toward the cruiser. When we reached the gate, I turned to look one last time. The fog had thinned a little, just enough for me to see the grave again. Only now, the soil wasn't soft anymore. It looked settled, smooth, and the headstone, my name, was gone. Just blank stone to be by the time we got back in the car. Dean was silent again, staring out the window that I tried to make sense of it. The grave, the noise, what he said. But my thoughts were scattered. I wanted to radio it in. But what would I even say? My rookie partner found a grave with my name on it, and now it's gone. No one would believe that. We drove the rest of the route in silence. When I dropped him off back at the station, he finally turned to me. "See you next shift," he said. Like nothing had happened, I nodded, too tired to argue. But when I came back the next night, there was no Dean on the schedule. No file, no record, nothing. The sergeant looked at me like I was crazy when I asked. "We haven't had a new recruit in months." He said that I didn't argue, just nodded and walked out. That night, I went back to the cemetery alone. The fog was there again, the air heavy, and right where we stood the night before was a fresh grave and no name, no date, just a faint impression of a handprint pressed into the soil. And when I leaned closer, I swear, I could still hear breathing coming from underneath. It was just after sundown when they told me I'd have a new partner for the shift. The storm from earlier had left the air heavy, damp, the kind that clings to your clothes long after the rain stops. The dispatcher's voice came through the static, soft but steady. "Unit 47, you'll be riding with a new recruit tonight. Name's Dean." I remember grumbling under my breath. I've been doing this job long enough to hate breaking in rookies. They talk too much, or not at all. Either way, it's always the same, nerves, bad jokes, trying to act tougher than they are. But when I saw him standing by the cruiser, hands in his pockets, he didn't look nervous, just calmed. He had that clean, pressed uniform look, collar straight, shoes polished, hair too neat for a guy working night patrol. His face was young but not fresh. Something about it looked tired, familiar. Even he smiled when he saw me, that polite kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "You're Officer Hayes, right?" he said. "Yeah," I replied, unlocking the car. "You must be Dean." He nodded, sliding into the passenger seat. The door shut softly, no slam, no rush. Everything about him felt deliberate, like he was moving through a memory instead of the present. The rain started again as we pulled out of the lot. Not heavy, just a slow drizzle that made the roads glisten under the headlights. The first few miles we didn't talk. The radio hissed quietly, the wipers clicking back and forth. Then he said something that stuck with me. "I've been here before." I glanced over. "What do you mean? At the station?" He hesitated. "No, this route, these roads." "Well," I said, forcing a laugh, "it's a small town. You probably drove through it before training." He just looked out the window. "No, I mean, I remember it." That's when I felt it. The first flicker of something wrong. He couldn't have been here before. The last rookie they sent me came from another district, over 2 hours away. We don't get transfers from inside the county anymore. But I didn't press it. Sometimes, people say strange things their first night. The quiet can mess with you. Still, as the hours went on, I kept catching him staring out into the dark, like he was trying to recognize something that wasn't there. We were about halfway through the shift when dispatch called in a routine check, perimeter patrol at the old cemetery off Hollow Creek. It wasn't unusual. The fence there gets damaged after storms, and the place has a reputation for drawing teenagers looking to scare themselves. I groaned when I heard it. Lucky us, I muttered. Dean didn't say anything, but when I looked at him, he was already staring out the windshield, like he knew exactly where we were going. The cemetery sat behind a narrow gravel road, half hidden by oaks. The gate creaked when I pushed it open, the hinges screaming against the wind. The rain had stopped, but everything was still wet, the air thick, smelling of moss and rust. Dean followed me without a word. We moved our flashlights over the headstones, the beams sliding across names worn down by time. Most were so old you could barely read them. I'd been there a dozen times before, but that night it felt different. The fog was thicker, the ground soft underfoot, the silence pressing down harder than usual. About halfway through the inspection, Dean stopped. He wasn't looking around like I was, not scanning, not checking perimeter. He was staring straight ahead, toward a row of graves I'd never paid attention to. Something wrong? I asked. He didn't answer. He just started walking, slow, steady, like he was following something invisible. "Dean," I called out, "where are you going?" He didn't turn around. I followed him through the mist, boots sinking into the wet earth. My light caught glimpses of names, cracked stone, half-buried markers. The air got colder the deeper we went. Then he stopped. Right in front of a grave I swear I'd never seen before. IT was newer than the rest. The stone clean, edges sharp like it hadn't been there long. The soil around it was darker, softer, as if it had been recently disturbed. Dean stood there, breathing slow, his head tilted slightly. He whispered, "Here." I frowned. "What do you mean, here?" He turned to me, finally turned, and his expression was off. Not scared, not calm, just blank. "This is the one," he said. I lifted my flashlight toward the headstone. The beam slid across the carved letters, and for a second, I thought I was seeing it wrong. That MY name. Officer Daniel Hayes. The date underneath, blurred by rain. But the year looked wrong. Too recent. I took a step back, the mud pulling at my boots. "What kind of joke is this?" I said. Dean didn't move. I grabbed his shoulder, spun him around. "You think this is funny? Some kind of rookie hazing crap?" He didn't react. Didn't even blink. Then, softly, almost like he was talking to himself, he said, "I told you I've been here before." The wind picked up, carrying a smell I can't explain. Not rot, not smoke, but something old. Like the inside of a coffin that's been sealed too long. I turned my flashlight back to the grave. The soil had shifted. just slightly, but enough to notice. Like something underneath had moved. That's when I heard it, a faint scraping sound. Right under our feet that I froze. Dean didn't. He just kept staring, his lips moving like he was whispering to someone underground. Stop, I said. Back up. Now. He didn't. The sound grew louder, wet earth sliding against itself. Something pushing. Dean. I shouted, grabbing his arm. He looked at me then, but the expression on his face, it wasn't right. His eyes were unfocused, mouth trembling like he was holding back a smile. And then he said something I'll never forget. You shouldn't be here. Not again. I stumbled back. What the hell does that mean? He didn't answer, just turned back toward the grave and whispered my name. The scraping stopped. Silence. Heavy. Final. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The fog hung thick, swallowing the light. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then Dean took a step closer to the headstone, reached down, pressed his hand against the soil. The ground gave a low, hollow sound, like air escaping from a lung that he whispered something I couldn't hear. And then he stood up, brushing the dirt off his hand. It's done, he said quietly. What's done? I asked. He didn't look at me, just started walking back toward the cruiser. When we reached the gate, I turned to look one last time. The fog had thinned a little, just enough for me to see the grave again. Only now, the soil wasn't soft anymore. It looked settled, smooth, and the headstone, my name, was gone. Just blank stone that'd be why the time we got back in the car. Dean was silent again. Staring out the window, I tried to make sense of it. The grave, the noise, what he said. But my thoughts were scattered. I wanted to radio it in, but what would I even say? My rookie partner found a grave with my name on it, and now it's gone. No one would believe that we drove the rest of the route in silence. When I dropped him off back at the station, he finally turned to me. See you next shift, he said. Like nothing had happened, I nodded, too tired to argue. But when I came back the next night, there was no Dean on the schedule. No file, no record, nothing. The sergeant looked at me like I was crazy when I asked. We haven't had a new recruit in months, he said that I didn't argue. Just nodded and walked out. That night, I went back to the cemetery alone. The fog was there again, the air heavy, and right where we stood the night before was a fresh grave and no name. No date, just a faint impression of a handprint pressed into the soil, and when I leaned closer, I swear, I could still hear breathing coming from underneath. I didn't sleep that day. Not because of fear, not exactly, but because every time I closed my eyes, I felt like I was falling into someone else's dream. Everything around me had started to blur. The faces in the station, the walls. Even the ticking clock on the far wall seemed slower, offbeat, like it wasn't ticking in time with me anymore. The next evening, I went back to the station early. The building was quiet. Too quiet for a weekday night. Usually the night shift had at least 2 other patrol cars rolling. But tonight, there was just mine. Dean was already there. Sitting at my desk, he had the old dispatch logs open in front of him. Pages yellowed, edges burnt, words half faded. I didn't even know those old books were still here. He didn't look up when I entered. Just said, "You were late tonight." I forced a small laugh. "Didn't realize you kept track of that." "I don't," he said, turning the page slowly. "But you usually come earlier when you're starting to remember." That stopped me cold. Starting to remember what? He looked up. His eyes looked darker than usual. Not tired, not angry, just heavy. The nights before this one. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I wanted to tell him that didn't make sense, that there were no nights before this one. Except there was a hollow feeling in my chest, a memory that didn't have an image, but had weight, like the ghost of something that used to be there. I walked past him to the evidence shelf. Boxes stacked high, labeled in sloppy marker, Station 12, Incident Logs, Dispatch Reports 2018, Radio Archives. The first box I grabbed was covered in dust. Inside, nothing but blank tapes. Old cassettes with no labels, no notes. Just empty. That I picked one up, turning it in my hand. "What is this?" Dean didn't answer. That I grabbed another. Same thing, blank. I opened a second box, then a third. Every log, every tape, every record. Empty. Pages that should have been filled with shift notes, called details, coordinates, blank. Not erased. Never written. I felt my stomach twist. This isn't possible. There should be reports from... I stopped myself. I didn't know what I was going to say. Reports from when... Dean closed the book in front of him, dust lifting in the air like smoke. There's never anything there, he said quietly. You check every time. You start to remember, and then you check, and it's all blank. He stood up slowly, and that's when you start to see it. My voice came out hoarse. See what? He smiled faintly. It wasn't comforting. The edges. I didn't understand what he meant. Not yet, but something in the way he said it made the room feel smaller. I turned to the radio on the desk. It was an old unit, the kind we phased out years ago. I switched it on just to hear something. Static, no dispatch chatter, no background hum, just that endless, softest. I turned the dial slowly. And then a whisper, not words exactly, just breathing that I froze, fingers on the dial. The sound was faint, but it was there, soft, rhythmic. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Dean, I said quietly, you hear that? He didn't move. He was just standing there, watching me. Dean, he tilted his head. That's you? The words hit like ice water. I turned the volume down, but the breathing stayed. It wasn't coming from the radio anymore. IT was behind me. Slow, shallow, closed. That I spun around. Nothing. Just the office. The empty hallway beyond the glass door. But I knew that sound. I knew it like I knew my own heartbeat. Because it was mine, IT sounded exactly like the way I breathe when I panic. When I'm trying not to make it obvious that I'm scared, my chest was tight. My throat felt dry. I shut off the radio and took a step back. Dean was still watching me, his face unreadable. You're remembering, he said quietly. Remembering what? I snapped. That I'm losing my mind? He didn't answer right away. Just looked down at the floor. You've said that before too. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to ground myself. But all I could see in the dark behind my eyelids was light, flashing blue and red light, and the echo of rain on glass. IT felt familiar, too familiar. When I opened my eyes, Dean was gone. The chair he'd been standing beside was empty. The door was still closed. I called out his name, but the station swallowed my voice. Only hum of the lights answered. I walked through the hall, past the empty desks, past the evidence lockers. Everything looked wrong. The colors were off. The air felt heavier. And as I passed the old case board, something caught my eye. A photo, pinned there with a thumbtack. IT was a picture of me, standing by the patrol car, rain on my shoulders, a flashlight in hand. The angle was strange, like someone had taken from far away. Half-dash hidden. That MY's stomach dropped when I saw the date on the corner. October 11th, 2025. Tonight. I pulled it off the board, heart pounding. Underneath, it were more photos. Different nights, different angles. Always me, always the same expression. That tired half smile I give when the camera catches me off guard. Some were newer, some older, and on the back of each one, a line of red marker. You're close. The handwriting was careful, neat, familiar. That IT looked like mine. That I dropped the photos, stepping back. My head was buzzing, like static under my skin. Dean's voice echoed, faint but clear. You're getting close. You always do. I turned around. The office behind me wasn't the same anymore. The walls looked darker, edges soft, bending slightly like heat distortion. The clock on the wall was spinning too fast, second hand whipping around in circles. The air was thick with dust or smoke or both. That I stumbled toward the desk, toward the light. My hand shook as I grabbed the radio again. Dispatch. I set into it. My voice cracked. This is Unit 47. Do you copy? Static. I tried again. Dispatch. Do you copy? I need assistance. Then a reply, but not the one I wanted. Unit 47. The voice said softly, you're off shift. It was my voice. That I dropped the mic. It hit the desk with a dull clatter. Every sound in the room stopped. The clock froze mid-tick. The hum of the lights went silent. Even the rain outside, gone. For a second, I thought the world had just paused. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, careful, familiar. That I turned, and there was Dean, but his uniform was torn, soaked in something dark. His badge was rusted. His skin pale like candle wax. He looked at me, and that same tired pity filled his eyes. "You're almost there," he whispered. "One more night." I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. He stepped closer, until the distance between us was just a few inches. "You keep trying to fix it," he said, "to find the truth. But the truth doesn't change. Only your memory does." His voice was trembling now. "You think if you look hard enough, you'll find a different ending. But you won't." I shook my head, backing up. "No, I can stop this. I can—" He cut me off, voice soft. "You already did." The floor shifted beneath me. The room seemed to bend inward. And for just a moment, I saw it. The edges. Like Dean said, the world, it seems, faint cracks of light running through the walls, the floor, the air itself. The edges of a loop, bleeding light. And in that light, I saw a flash, metal twisted, glass shattered, the taste of blood, the smell of rain, and smoke that a voice, mine, screaming Dean's name. Then nothing. When I blinked, the cracks were gone. The room was still again. Dean was gone, and I was alone. The only sound left was a radio, clicking softly, like a heart trying to beat. Then a voice, low and calm. "Unit 47, report to the graveyard. Hollow Creek Road." Same call, same tone, and I realized the night wasn't over. IT had just started again. The night never really ended. IT just stretched. The clock on the cruiser's dash read 3:33 a.m., and it hadn't moved in hours. The engine hummed. The radio hissed faintly, but everything outside was still. The fog had thickened to the point where the headlights barely reached the front gate of the cemetery. Dean was gone. He'd been sitting right beside me a moment ago, his voice quiet, eyes on the road. Then I blinked, and the seat was empty. The door was still locked. No footprints. No sound. Just gone. I sat there for a long time, staring at the fog, trying to convince myself I hadn't imagined him from the start. But the longer I stared, the harder it was to tell what was real anymore. The air felt heavy, like breathing through wet cloth. That I grabbed the radio, thumb hovering over the transmit button. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47. Do you copy?" Static. "Dispatch." I said again, louder this time. "This is Unit 47, checking in." Nothing, just a faint, low hum beneath the static. Not quite a voice, not quite silence either. I leaned closer, tried to listen, and that's when I heard it. Breathing, slow, deep, steady, but it wasn't mine. I dropped the mic and stared at it. The sound didn't stop. Someone, something, was breathing through the radio that I tried to open the door, but the handle wouldn't move. It felt stuck, like it was welded shut. The fog outside pressed against the windows, thick and pulsing, almost alive, and I looked back at the clock. Still 3:33. That I tried to start the car again, even though it was already running. Just something to do, something that made sense. The key turned, the engine coughed, then went dead. The headlights flickered once and went out. The world outside turned black. Only the dashboard light remained, washing the car in that sickly green glow. And then the radio spoke. "Unit 47, the voice was calm, flat, familiar. Your shift begins now." I froze. That IT was the same voice from my very first night on duty. The same one that used to call out assignments, report times, warnings. Only now it sounded older, hollow, like it was being played from deep underground. That I grabbed the mic again. "Who is this? Identify yourself." Static. Then quietly, "You already know." I don't remember opening the door, but suddenly I was outside, standing in the cold. The cruiser behind me was still running, even though I'd watched it die. The headlights were on again, but pointed the wrong way, toward the cemetery gate. The fog had started to thin, just enough for me to see the shape of the fence. The iron gate stood wide open, the hinges creaking softly even though there was no wind. I should have called for backup. I should have driven away. But something pulled me forward. Each step felt heavier than the last. The ground was slick, mud mixing with old leaves, and beneath that, something softer. IT took me a moment to realize I was walking over footprints. Boot prints in Wyoming, they led straight to the gate and into the rows of headstones. The air was colder here, sharper, the kind of cold that bites at your teeth when you breathe in. I switched on my flashlight. The beam cut across the fog, revealing the graves, one after another, stretching endlessly into the dark. And then I saw ITMY name. Carved into the first headstone, I stopped breathing for a moment. The stone was old, cracked and worn, but the letters were clear. My name, my badge number. I backed away, the light shaking in my hand. The next stone had my name too, and the next, every grave in that place, every single one, bore my name. That I stumbled backward, heart hammering so hard it made my vision pulse. No, I whispered. No, this isn't real. But it was. The mud beneath me shifted, and I felt the ground sink just slightly, as if something below was moving. The air was thick with the smell of rust and earth, and somewhere faint but unmistakable, I heard a voice, a Dean's voice. "Don't fight it," he said softly. "It's just a shift." I turned in every direction, but he wasn't there. Just the graves, the fog. Then, through the beam of my light, I saw a figure standing by the far tree line. Tall, still, watching. For a moment I thought it was Dean, but when I moved closer, the figure didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't even flinch when the light hit it full on. IT was a man in uniformed NY uniform. His badge gleamed faintly in the light, though it was corroded, rust eating through numbers. His skin was grayish, stretched tight across his face. His head was tilted slightly, like he was studying me. And then he smiled, the same tired, polite smile I'd seen 1,000 times in the mirror. I stumbled back, my flashlight slipping from my hand. It hit the ground and rolled, beams spinning across the graves. When I bent down to grab it, the figure was gone, but the ground where he'd stood was disturbed, freshly dug. The smell hit me then, earth and rot, and something else. Something metallic. I heard the radio crackle faintly in the distance. I turned back toward the cruiser, the light from the dashboard faint through the fog. But it wasn't where I'd left IT. IT was closer, sitting just a few yards from the gate. The headlights were pointed straight at me now. I couldn't see anyone inside, but the engine was running. The radio was still on, the voice repeating the same line, over and over like a broken record. "Unit 47, your shift begins now." Each repetition got softer, slower, that I started backing away. "Stop," I said aloud, though I wasn't sure who I was talking to. "Stop it." But the voice didn't stop. That IT just changed. The tone flattened. The pitch lowered until it wasn't words anymore, just a vibration, like the sound of a heartbeat through a wall. And then, through distortion, came another voice than my own. "You've been here before," it said. "You just don't remember the endings." I felt the world tilt. My knees buckled, and I caught myself in the nearest headstone, one with my name carved deeper than the rest. I ran my fingers over the letters. The stone was wet. Only it wasn't water. IT was blood, dripping from the grooves of my name. I staggered back, heart racing. The graves around me seemed to shift, the earth beneath them pulsing, rising, falling, as if breathing. The fog swirled violently, and I heard dozens of whispers, faint, overlapping, all speaking the same thing in unison. Shift never ended. The words circled me, echoing through the air, through the ground, through my chest. The world blurred. The fog turned red around the edges. And in that haze, I saw faces, pale, hollow, all wearing my expression. Some smiling, some crying, some just staring blankly. I fell to my knees, gripping the cold mud. "What is this?" I shouted. "What do you want from me?" A voice, close, right by my ear, whispered, "We want you to remember." I turned, but there was no one there. Only my own shadow stretched across the ground. But it wasn't moving the way I was at. IT stood still, staring back at me. Then, slowly, it raised its hand, and I felt my arm rise on its own like a puppet on strings. My fingers clenched around something heavy. My badge that IT was rusting. The metal flaking in my palm. The nameplate beneath was corroded, but through the grime I could still make out the engraving. Station 12. Unit 47 to beneath that, a date. October 11, 2018, the night Station 12 burned down. The air grew hot, the fog glowing faintly orange. The smell of smoke filled my lungs, and suddenly I wasn't standing in the graveyard anymore. I was in the station again, flames crawling up the walls. Dean shouted my name from somewhere I couldn't reach. The ceiling cracked open, and the world fell apart in light and sound, then darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was sitting back in my cruiser. The fog outside was still. The radio hissed quietly, and the clock on the dash read 3:33 a.m. I looked down. My badge lay on the seat beside me, polished, clean. The radio crackled once more. Unit 47, the voice said calmly. Report to Hollow Creek Cemetery. Disturbance by the gate. My hands were trembling. I picked up the mic slowly. This is Unit 47, I said, voice cracking. Copy that. I put the cruiser in gear and drove into the fog. The same road, the same call, the same beginning. Because the shift never ended, IT just started over.